decision won't take effect for several months.
Israel's blanket exemption for religious scholars was deemed unconstitutional in 2018, but the fast-growing ultra-Orthodox community, which opposes military service, also wields key political power. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has struggled to come up with a military draft plan that does not threaten his governing coalition, and he faces heated opposition whatever he proposes. The war in Gaza has meant massive mobilization and troop shortages, galvanizing pressure to end the ultra-Orthodox waiver. The court decision puts off enforcement until August, giving Netanyahu more time. But it says starting next week, Israel must freeze public funding for religious students now eligible for the draft. Jennifer Ludden, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Syria is accusing Israel of striking the northern Syrian province of Aleppo, killing several people. The Israeli military has not commented. An opposition group not based in Syria claims the strikes hit sites used by Hezbollah militants. Hezbollah has been firing rockets into northern Israel. Russia has carried out another massive nighttime attack on Ukraine using missiles and drones. NPR's Hanna Palomarenko reports from Kyiv. Ukraine's energy minister says Russia targeted power generation facilities.
Ukraine's national energy company Ukrenergo reported serious damage to thermal and hydroelectric power plants in the central and western regions. DTEC, the largest energy company, said that one worker was wounded and noted that since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the company's thermal power plants have been shelled 160 times. The Ukrainian energy system is still recovering from the recent Russian attacks. A week ago, Russia carried out its largest attack on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, striking the Dnipro hydroelectric power plant and other energy facilities across Ukraine, leaving thousands of residents without electricity. Hanna Polomarenko, NPR News, Kyiv.
Enormous cranes have arrived near the port of Baltimore. They will help cut apart sections of the Maryland Bridge that collapsed this week. Huge chunks of metal fill the river. The bridge broke when a fully loaded cargo ship crashed into one of its supports. Lieutenant General Scott Spellman of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers says one part of the collapsed bridge has to be lifted away from the ship.
There's a large piece of truss bridge draped over the front of that vessel. We've got to get that off. We know that's our first step. That piece of steel weighs somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 tons.
Officials hope that they can find the bodies of 4 missing people. They are believed to be trapped in the debris in the river. You're listening to NPR News.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. An Amber Alert has been distributed throughout the state as police search for a red Toyota Camry stolen this morning with a child inside. Chicopee police say the car was stolen just before 9 a.m. from 136 Exchange Street with a 3-year-old boy in the back seat. The child was wearing a green Easter shirt with a dinosaur on front. The car, as we said, a red Toyota Camry, has the Massachusetts license plates, and the number is 3SCX29. That's 3SCX29. The state police are assisting the Chicopee police. They say the car was headed down I-91 southbound. A group that advises the federal government on the Cape Cod National Seashore is meeting again for the first time in years. The Seashore's Federal Advisory Commission was suspended by former President Trump during his first year in office, but the Secretary of the Interior reestablished the group last fall. Jennifer Flynn is superintendent of the Seashore. She spoke at a Barnstable County meeting this week.
The current charter is much more straightforward and simpler, and it does ask for advice on things related to the development of the seashore, and particularly calls out zoning and any process of condemnation.
Some Provincetown residents say the group could have been able to weigh in last year when the National Park Service put some of the Seashore's dune shacks up for a competitive leasing process. In sports, the undefeated Red Sox... They won their first game. The undefeated Red Sox play Seattle again tonight. It's a 9:40 start. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Joyce Foundation, committed to advancing racial equity and economic mobility for the next generation in the Great Lakes region. Learn more at joycefdn.org. And the Annie E. Casey Foundation.
Friday. I am Marjorie Egan. You are listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. And I want to mention again, we are here now Tuesdays, Fridays, and Wednesdays every week. Good morning, Jim.
Do you, when people applaud at the beginning of the show, do you look out to see who's not applauding?
I always
absolutely
do. Taking names.
Yeah, we're going to target those people later. In any case, hi, Marjorie. How are you?
I'm very well, Jim. How are you?
Good. Oh, good. Excellent. So opening today, and by the way, we have some incredible music. Music is usually at 11:30, it's 12:30 today. Donna Musicale, they were rehearsing this morning. It is not only
fantastic,
unusual, but really beautiful, and I think you're going to love it. So please stick around, or if you're not here, come on down, or watch the stream or whatever it is. So opening today's show, we are talking about the insane, exploding cost of a college education. 4 universities in New England now cost about $90,000 a year for students. That's Yale, BU, Wellesley, Tufts. Others are pretty close. And it's not as if other private under 90,000 universities are a steal either. Our number is 877-301-8970 to call or text. At what point do people say, enough is enough? We want to hear from you. Are you currently paying your way through college, struggling to make it all work, or terrified about the student debt you're accruing or about to accrue? What are you doing to make it work? Commuting from home, ramen for dinner 7 nights a week, or are you someone who decided to take a pass on spending $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, instead embracing maybe a public college, community college, or maybe cost played a major role in you skipping higher education altogether, or maybe you've decided it's worth that cost. So we want to hear from students, almost students, and their scared parents at 877-301-8970. And by the way, we'll do the mandatory. Over a lifetime, a person who has a college education as compared to someone who only has a high school degree will on average make $1 million more. So over a lifetime, you do get that back. But these colleges are essentially, unless you get financial aid, and there's a lot of financial aid, but unless you have financial aid, it's $400,000 almost in costs.
But not so much for people that are in the middle of the road financially.
That is correct. That's correct.
I mean, you may think you're going to be able to get financial aid. Well, if you're making the kind of money now, which is basically over $100,000 you need to live in Massachusetts, you're not going to get that much financial aid. And you figure you're going to need an extra to make an extra $1 million, Jim, because you're going to be paying off your college loans until you're dead, at the rate that's going. 877-301-8970 is the number to call or text. You know what the thing is? I remember when my kids were young, and my youngest is now 29, I thought, well, by the time she gets to college, they'll fix this problem, because it was going up enormously then. It wasn't $90,000, obviously. Just 6 years ago, it was $70,000. So $20,000 increase in 6 years is pretty scary. Thank you very much.
That's okay.
But I don't know. Are they ever going to fix this problem? I thought they would have had it fixed in 20 years.
Who's they?
I thought the government would do something about this, but
they're going to do
that has not happened.
So by the way, there's some good news in Massachusetts on the community college front. Maura Healey, I think shortly after she took over as governor, did this executive action where certain low-income people, I'm not going to go into all the criteria to qualify, get free college. Karen Spilka, who's the Senate president, is behind a move, we have no idea if it's going to happen, that would make free community college affordable for all, including wealthier people. There's some criticism of that. State University, I think UMass is in the 50 range. Am I not right about that? 50,000, which is still not cheap.
Is $37,000 if you are in-state, $59,000 for out-of-state. And then there's something I didn't even know about, New England Regional Student Program, which provides these tuition breaks to people that live in the 6 New England states. Say if you are at Rhode Island and you want to go to UMass, Amherst, you get a little bit of a break. Instead of paying the out-of-state of $59,000, it's almost $60,000 actually, you pay $53,000.
Okay, so you and I, by the way, Marjorie went to a school that is a great school now that was a great school then. I went to a college that is a great school now that was nowhere near this then, University of Pennsylvania, Stanford for you. Okay, your kids are not 29 to 30-something, they're 17. They get into Stanford, they get into the University of Pennsylvania, whatever it is, 90,000, 88,000, whatever, and do you say to them, UMass Amherst is a great opportunity. It's for an in-state, I'm serious. It's $50,000 a year less. Doesn't have the prestige, obviously, of a Stanford or a University of Pennsylvania, but the debt you're going to come out with, because we're not going to qualify for a lot of financial aid, says Marjorie and her kids. What do you say to the kid? I want to go to Stanford, the kid says. I'm not saying your kids would say that, but you know what I mean.
Okay, I'm biased.
Wow.
I'm biased because I think one of the great things about going to a place like Harvard or Stanford or Yale is, first of all, you can compete with anybody because you managed to get into that
Who's
school.
paying for it?
Well, you're going to be in debt for a long time. But
Do you remember the Obamas, by the way, were still
Jim,
paying off their college loans?
To pretend that there isn't an advantage to those schools. I mean, you can get just as good of an education at UMass Amherst or UMass Boston, but coming from one of those schools, the networking opportunities, the job opportunities, I think that they're real and they're going to make a big difference. Anyway, when you go to a cocktail party, you can always say that you went to Stanford and everybody think you're smart, whether you are smart or not. It's kind of like a bragging right kind of thing.
Our number is 877-301-8970. It's triggered by the story read in the Globe this morning. $90,000 plus a year for BU, Tufts, Wellesley, and Yale, with a lot of other elite schools just a couple of $1,000s behind.
But you look at those ads UMass Boston used to run of all the smart people that went there.
Oh, sure.
Jack Welch, he's no longer with us, but he held
General Electric.
That's right. He was a millionaire many times over and had one of the biggest companies in the world. So lots of people come out of. Didn't Paul English go to UMass?
He did.
Yeah, so a lot of people come
Founder
out of UMass
of Kayak and
do enormously well. And UMass Boston, by the way, is cheaper than UMass Amherst. It's $31,856 if you're in-state, and a lot if you're out-of-state, $75,000.
By the way, we're doing a remote broadcast. Are we allowed to say this? Can we say this now? Yeah? No?
So
no,
one last thing.
We're doing a remote podcast at some point. We can, May 3rd from UMass Boston.
One last
we're pretty
thing,
excited
Jim.
about it. Yeah.
What about Penn? Would you tell your kids to go to Penn if they get
I
in?
would tell, honestly, you can be a carpenter and you can be a plumber. That's what I would say. Now, I sort of feel the same way you do. There's a bias. I mean, what's incredible? You encounter people who are 50 years old, you hear them at a cocktail party or something, someone saying, oh, you went to Harvard. Yeah, you went to Harvard 30 years ago.
That's right.
Shouldn't you be judged upon your career rather than the college you went into? But unfortunately, there is a bias. Having said that, I would like to think that if I sat down with my kids who are now in their 30s, when they were 16 or 17, we could have a sane conversation about the fact that you don't want to be saddled with that insane kind of debt, even if you're going to do well or maybe better during life.
One last thing before we go.
Yeah, we're not going.
My best friend growing up, very smart kid in school.
Yeah.
Father was a police officer.
Yeah.
She didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
She was top 10 in a class, in my high school class.
Yeah.
She got into Radcliffe, which is then Harvard. Harvard
For
is
women,
no more
right?
Radcliffe anymore, but essentially getting into Harvard. And her father said, it's an extra $500. Why don't you go to a state school?
Did she really?
Yes, and it would have
How'd she feel about that?
It would have changed. Now she knows it would have changed her life.
Okay, Heidi in North Reading, you were first on Boston Public Radio. We're broadcasting from the Boston Public Library. Thanks for calling in. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. Longtime fans, love your show.
Thank you so much. What's up?
So we have 3 kids, ages 24, 26, and 29, and helped put them all through college. And they all went to, 2 went to state universities, 1 went to a local Endicott college. Mm-hmm. They all loved it, had great experiences. And my advice is I would not opt to pay an enormous amount of money. I would definitely not opt to pay anything that parents and kids together aren't comfortable committing to. And we had started our 529 savings plans when they were all very little. That helped a lot. And my advice to people that I give all the time is apply to more schools than less. And don't be penny wise, pound foolish on that, because you're not going to get into them all, and that reduces the number. And then out of the ones left, some might not give you any money, and some might give you 30, 40, 50%. Mm-hmm.
Hey,
so you can't really make that final decision.
How do your 2 public university graduates feel about their choice after the fact?
Absolutely love them.
Great.
Our oldest went to UConn and was a math major and did a great job.
Great.
Great basketball teams too, huh, Heidi? I mean, what a fun time going to those games.
How about the other one quickly, Heidi?
Yeah, my other son went to UNH, where my husband and I went, and he loved it, majored in genetics, and had a great experience.
Fabulous. Hey, Heidi, thank you for calling. We really appreciate it. 877-301-8970 is the number.
Let's go to Jim in the truck. Thank you for calling, Jim.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, good morning. How you guys doing?
Excellent.
Thank
Thanks.
Yeah, we're in this boat right now. My son's a senior, and he's graduating. He wants to get into biomedical engineering, and he's been accepted at WPI, Rochester Institute of Technology, and they're all up over $200,000 for 4 years. But then he was accepted to Florida, and they're like $100,000 less.
Wow.
So don't leave us in suspense. What's happening?
Well, he's kind of leading towards the Sunshine State. You know what I mean?
Is he okay with that?
It's crazy.
Is he okay with that?
I'm nervous about it because he's really a homebody. But sooner or later, you got to cut the strings. You know what I mean?
That's what I hear.
So,
Hey, Jim, good luck to your kid. Thanks for the call. We appreciate it. Here's what Zoe, our colleague, said. I took summer classes all through my undergrad experience at Emerson, the summer classes at Salem State, Northern Essex, saved a bunch of money, graduated a year early, entered the workforce early, burned myself out a bit, but it was financially the best option for me. So that's a creative solution to a high-cost college problem.
Here's Maria from Winchendon. I'm a first-generation immigrant from Guatemala, the first in my family to graduate from college. I went to a state school in Fitchburg, went into social work. I cannot afford my student loans and wish I would have gone into a trade like plumbing. And somebody else just texted before and said, you know, what is the point of spending an astronomical amount of money to go to some of these really high-end $90,000 a year schools if you're not going to go into a career that is not going to make you the kind of money that you can even begin to pay back those loans? And Art from Bridgewater, one of our conservative texters, says what they should do is they should get rid of the student loans, and then colleges wouldn't cost so much money.
I think you should stop identifying Art by his politics. You don't identify liberal texters saying they're liberal texters, do you?
Well, that's a point, Jim.
Thank you.
I could just say, Art, I'll say nothing about you.
Well,
you're from West Bridgewater, and that's
from
it.
West Bridgewater,
That's it.
And we're really thrilled that he listens to the show.
Christina, it's Christina in the car. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Christina. Hi. Christina.
Yes, good morning.
Hi.
So, my nephew recently graduated from Batson, and like Zoe, he took summer classes because they were cheaper.
Yeah.
And he also went, during the year, first semester and second semester. But tuition cost the same whether you took 4 classes or you took 5 classes. So he took 5. And going summer, he graduated early. And he lived at home, and he also worked a part-time job. And he came out with no debt.
Well, that's pretty excellent. That's a pretty great way to start your post-college life. Christina, thank you for the call. You know, before we take a break, I've told you this story before, but not in years.
Yep.
My mother's best friend worked at the University of Pennsylvania. She hated the job. She was an administrative assistant or something. Hated it. She stayed for one reason, because she had an only kid.
Oh, that's right.
And she stayed there because employees of the University of Pennsylvania, I don't know if it's still the case, but it was when I was young and my mother was young, got free tuition. She worked there literally, you know the end of the story. She worked there for 20 years longer than she intended to, purely to get the free college thing. Her son applies, doesn't get in.
I
mean, can you imagine?
Yes. I have heard that story from friends of mine who've worked at Boston College. I mean, Boston College, when I was a kid, you played CYO basketball. You could drive up 24 and go to Boston College. All that has changed, needless to say, because of Doug Flutie years ago. Boston College is really hard to get into now. I know people that have worked at Boston College for the same reason, and whoops, it didn't work out.
Don't read that thing from Jamie, by the way. You'll be tempted to, but I would suggest you do not. That's our lead producer tempting us with something that's going to get us all in trouble, so we will not do that. We have to take a break. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. If you want to call or text us about how you are ever going to pay for anybody's college education, especially if you want to go to a private school and it's $90,000 a year, the number is 877-301-8.
There are record-setting numbers of international students enrolling in U.S. colleges and universities, and that is changing their financial models.
There's this perception that international students are coming here, that we're paying as Americans, we're subsidizing them, but the fact is it's really the reverse.
A special report about international students on American campuses. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Dandelion Energy, helping homeowners across the Northeast
to lower their carbon footprints with geothermal heating and cooling systems. More information at dandelionenergy.com. And Tanglewood, the summer home of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, bringing Beethoven, Broadway, and more to the Berkshires. You can plan your summer at tanglewood.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Marjorie Egan. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com. Don't overdo it, okay? Thank you, though. youtube.com/GBH is always very nice of you. I shouldn't say that kind of thing. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the exorbitant tuition costs at some of the elite private universities in our region. We want to know if you're a student, an almost student, a former student, a parent, how you react to this, and if you're changing your life's plans as a result of the debt or the potential debt, or you're deciding to go to a cheaper kind of option, and how do you feel about it? 877-301-8970.
I'm taking a lot of heat from the texters who say I'm being an elitist snob for saying it's a good thing to go to a school like a Harvard or a Stanford or Yale.
It's true. I mean, it is true. But
I'm being an elitist snob. There you go.
Guilty, right?
I'm guilty.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Fine. You want to take a call?
Yeah, let's go to Eileen from Walpole. Hi, Eileen.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie. How are you doing?
Good.
Fine, thanks.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Sure.
Long-time listener. I just want to say I am a Boston College graduate, and I just want to let listeners know that there's this weird paradox where a lot of times the schools that have the higher sticker price actually give you more financial aid.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, that's definitely the case for me and my family. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. And pretty much for all of us, I went to Boston College and my siblings, and it actually came out to be about the same price as UMass Amherst.
Wow.
Because what BC has is BC is one of the only schools, I think there may be 20 left in the country, where they're both need blind, but also they meet 100% of demonstrated need according to the FAFSA. So whatever on the FAFSA says that your family can afford to pay, BC will meet up to that. And then after that, you have to get federal loans. So for me, it was it was very odd because when I was applying in high school, I thought there's no way I could afford to go to BC. So I applied to all of these schools. And I just want to let that for high school students to know, don't be scared by the sticker price. Sometimes the schools that are more expensive have higher endowments, and they make education possible no matter your income.
That was a really important call, and we're really glad you did that, Eileen. Thanks so much for taking the time to call us. 877-301-8970. And Eileen is right, I'm sure in some cases. But if you're like a 13-year-old kid thinking of going to college, and you read this morning's Globe and you hear the story, how daunting is that? Even if you intellectually know what Eileen just told you, there's a decent shot. If you're a moderate income family, you're going to get decent financial aid. I think it's a scary and it's an ominous thing hanging over your head.
I mean, somebody just texted, they're both nurses. Oh, here it is. Meg from Exeter, New Hampshire. My son is a senior. He's attending nursing school in the fall, accepted in multiple nursing programs. But because of their income, she and her husband are both nurses. Mm-hmm. And you're not loaded if you're both nurses, but you get a decent income.
Yep.
And they were not eligible to get any financial aid. They are still paying off their own student loan debts from when they went to school, like whatever it is, 20 or 30 years ago. So he's going to be taking loans as well, but he's going to take the cheapest option. I mean, a nurse is a great job, but her theory is she doesn't need to go to the most expensive nursing school to get the best education.
So, by the way, I mentioned the Obama thing before. I wanted to make sure I was right. Here's a quote from Obama in 2012. He was elected in 2008. Am I right? He started serving in 2008. Okay. This is 4 years in. Check this out. All right, I'm the president of the United States. We only finished paying off our student loans 8 years ago. So the Obamas paid off their student loans 4 years before he was elected to be the president of the United States. I mean, think about it. It's just unbelievable.
Well, if you come out of school, I mean, you know, if you go to a cheaper school, obviously your debt is less, but if you go to a school that's $90,000 now and you are only paying part of the way through, you could be coming out $200,000 in debt.
I know.
Right? So it limits the amount of jobs you can take.
And where you live and whether you buy the house. I mean, obviously the impact's down the... But I also think the thing that I was trying to say before, just 1 second, is not just the financial implications, the psychological implications of either potentially having that debt or actually having that. We've taken calls when Joe Biden was proposing this massive loan forgiveness thing, and obviously the Supreme Court knocked it down, so he did whatever he could do by executive action. Subsequently, he's done a couple of things, but nowhere near the breadth of what he was going to do. Remember all the people calling, talking about really almost like psychological terror because of the debt that they knew they were accruing or already had.
I mean, when we talk about, people saying, Democrats saying the economy's great, then you talk to people in their 20s and 30s and they say, well, the economy's not so great when you can't afford the rent, you can't afford childcare, you're paying your student debt off. I mean, I think people are up to their eye teeth in debt at a very early age now, which is much different than it was even like 30 years ago.
By the way, we should make clear, because full disclosure is one of the things Marjorie and I try to do as much as possible. Marjorie, as we found out, is an elite snob. So obviously her
That's right.
her perspective in this conversation is, somewhat suspect.
See the other text we just got from one of your colleagues?
Why don't you say it? Why don't you read it? One of our colleagues, one of our best buddies, Azita.
If my son had gotten into Harvard, I would have sold a kidney to help pay for it, but I told him he's better off going to a state school than a mid or low-tier private one because there's a better chance of being with other smart kids and better diversity, including socioeconomic diversity. That is a great point. If you're going to go to a private school that's going to cost you a fortune, you better make sure that is, if it's a second or third tier private school, that's worth it as opposed to a state school. Somebody just texted and talked about trying to get into UMass and did not get into UMass, and their grade point average coming out of high school was close to 4.0. UMass has become tremendously difficult to get into because the prices are less.
Okay, let's go to Bill in Newton. Hello, Bill.
Hello. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Couple points.
Yeah.
My kids went to UMass Amherst, and I made that decision for them because I couldn't allow my child to go into $100,000 in debt.
Yep.
Parents allowing that are doing their kids. It's almost, I don't mean to say child abuse, but why would anyone let their 18-year-old kid make a choice about a $200,000 decision? When they're seniors in high school, we don't allow them to go to the car dealership on their own and buy any car they want. So why do we allow them to go into this debt? It's crazy.
How'd the kids feel? Hey, wait. Bill, how'd your kids... Bill.
More money?
Bill, how did your kids feel about your decision-making for them?
They thank me every day today because they're not $200,000 in debt.
Okay. Good enough for me. Bill,
Be the parent, Jim.
thank you much for the call.
Yeah.
Marjorie, we have a text from one of your closest friends, who I believe may even be here. You can always do what I did, go to a community college, save money for a couple of years, and then transfer to an elite college. And she ended up going to arguably the highest rated college in America.
That's right.
Amherst College,
That's a very good point. And a lot of people do that. They'll go to a community and save that money.
Mm-hmm.
That's another option. 2 years in a community college, you can stay home. You don't have to worry about tuition. And you get a lot of people think they get as good an education in a community college as they do in a 4-year state school.
What do you think of the nerve of your friend texting us personally while we're on the air live?
Why did she text me? Did she
horrible.
text me?
She texted you too.
She texted me while I was. I didn't. I'm busy reading the text from the on the computer.
From the actual listeners, yes.
But let me tell you, we're getting a lot of parents who are saying, "Here's one, Jan from Merrimack. We sent 4 daughters to college, 18 years apart. The last 2 are twins. First went to private schools, commuted. The price. The point she's making, the point a lot of other people are making, is that they are still paying their own student debt loans from when they were in college 20 years ago or 25 years ago, and now their kids are going to be assuming more student debt. So they're going to be kind of drowning.
How depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really bad. Let's go to Tom in Harvard. Hi.
Hi, Jim.
Hi.
First time calling.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Perfectly.
Okay. Yeah, my daughter got into Harvard and Yale, and we looked at financial aid packages and what the total cost was going to be. And Yale made the point that these tuitions are really a tax the rich policy. I could make half as much as I do, and we'd still pay the same amount for the tuition because they cap it. And they said, we could double the tuition, and you'd still pay the same price. So, I mean, they have huge endowments, Harvard and Yale both, and so they can afford to do that. But it's something to take into account. If you have an opportunity to go to one of those schools, I'd say take it.
Well, I hear you, and that's a variation on what I think Eileen, the caller, said before. Tom, thanks for your first call. Please do it again. Part of the problem, it seems to me, is not just what the real world financial impact is, and Tom and Eileen said it's not quite as great for many as it may look on paper. Just having that out there, I think, is a real discouragement, if that's a word, for young people who are contemplating college. I don't think they're, working through the FAFSA likelihood down the line. They're thinking about the colossal debt that they potentially could have. And I think that's
and a lot of places
really intimidating.
Want you to get master's degrees. A lot of agencies want social workers to get master's degrees. Social workers are not making big bucks, or teachers to get master's degrees. So you're going to have undergraduate debt, and you're going to have graduate school debt. I mean, that's where you're really in a bind. If you're going to get that kind of debt, you've got to make sure you're going to get a job that's not going to weigh you down into your 85.
How much did you make when you were working for the Fall River? What was your first thing? Fall River Gazette or something?
Fall River Herald News.
How much were you making?
$15 a story.
Is that no? Is that true?
That's true.
$15
so
a story.
I had to write a lot of stories. Let me tell you. Can we squeeze in one more?
One more quickly, yeah.
Nicole from Dorchester. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi. 2 points I want to make. So
Please.
My husband, whose family is from West Africa, they're from Ghana, so he's first generation. He went to Dartmouth. He only has a little bit of debt, but he loved going there. And now his niece is choosing between Dartmouth and a state school, and her parents want her to go to a state school because of the tuition, because she'll get almost a full ride. And my husband, is very much like, no, you need to go to Dartmouth. And I think his point is just the network.
That's Marjorie's point.
When you walk into a room, I think particularly, if you're maybe a child of immigrants or a person of color, and you have that cachet with an Ivy League education, it means something. It shouldn't, but it does. And so I think that their point is that for certain schools, the price tag is worth it for those two things alone.
That was a great capper
That's
for this
right.
conversation. Nicole, thank you for making the point.
The
really
bottom
appreciate
line
it. What is
Jim,
the bottom line?
I may be a snob and an elitist.
An elite snob.
But I have a lot of cachet.
You do.
A lot of cachet.
With whom exactly?
I don't know. Whoever will
Thank
take
you.
it. I'm ready to share my cachet. Okay, enough of that. Quick break. We're going to talk to someone who knows something about elite schools. I think Nancy Gertner
Yale Law
knows.
School.
Yeah, Yale Law School. That's right. And she teaches at Harvard Law School too. It doesn't get much better than that. We're going to talk to her about the former President Donald Trump's many money problems, trial problems, and when are any of these trials actually going to take place. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
As the influx of migrants into Massachusetts continues, the Healy administration is rolling out new eligibility requirements for shelter. I'm Adam Riley. This week on Talking Politics, we'll look at the shifting landscape of the migrant crisis and at why Massachusetts has become a target for Republican governors looking to score points on the topic. Plus, a sit-down with the state's Secretary of Veterans Services, John Santiago. Join me for Talking Politics tonight at 7 on GBH2.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Comcast, offering the Xfinity 10G network, designed to provide a connection for home networks so everyone can be online at once, even during peak hours. Xfinity.com. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie, and we're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now on Zoom for another edition of On the Docket by retired federal judge and Yale Law School graduate Nancy Gertner. She's a senior lecturer at Harvard Law School, BPR contributor, and hopefully, Marjorie and I talked a lot about this, hopefully the following comments by Donald Trump's former lawyer, Ty Cobb, on CNN will not ruin her stellar reputation.
Former Massachusetts District Court Judge Nancy Gertner, who's very highly regarded by her colleagues and lawyers, had the same reaction that I had, and I saw some reporting today where she was suggesting that they seek to recuse her on this basis as well, pointing out that she's just ignoring a raft of equally absurd motions as well, persistently delaying this case.
I would call that a career ender. Judge Gertner, welcome to the show. How are you?
I thought that was
good. I'm shocked.
Well,
do you know this guy? Do you know Tycon?
No, but I put this prominently on my CV.
Absolutely. I thought that was great. Well, I think he's got a point. Well, let's start with that. We talked to you before about this Judge Eileen Cannon down in Florida. She's only been on the bench since 2020. She's done made a lot of statements and asked for a lot of requests. This latest thing about this jury instructions so soon that have left a lot of legal scholars their jaws on the floor. So, is there any possibility of her leaving this case, or is she just going to keep flummoxing her way and delaying this endlessly?
There are two ways that she could be taken off the case. One way is if Smith appeals her latest jury instruction question, which was bizarre, just fundamentally bizarre. I'm not sure what there is to appeal, but if he got it up to the 11th Circuit, it's conceivable that the 11th Circuit, which had slapped her down before when she stopped the investigation, she stopped the review of the stuff that had been taken from his home, she stopped that review when the investigation pre-indictment part of a criminal case is almost, with some exceptions, completely in the discretion of the U.S. attorney. When she stopped that, the 11th Circuit, basically reversed her in a, stinging rebuke of her. So it's conceivable if there's another appeal, it would be mandamus, which is ordering the judge to do something. If it's conceivable, if it goes up on mandamus, that the 11th Circuit could say, she's really needs to be taken off the case. That's possible. The other thing that I was suggesting, which is what Attorney Cobb was praising me for. Let me say that again. Attorney Cobb was praising.
He was a guy with a long mustache,
yeah, and
right?
one of Trump's key lawyers, who's totally turned on Trump, by the way.
Early on, he was a lawyer.
I said that Jack Smith has to move to disqualify her, and he could move to disqualify her on the following grounds. One is she has not set a trial date.
Yeah, it's incredible.
She has not set a trial date. This is an administrative decision that it takes a second. She has left pending numbers and numbers of motions, which the Trump's lawyers have filed. Just contrast that with the judge in the hush money case, who has, sort of unceremoniously dealt with motions that were frivolous in open court. She, on the other hand, is taking seriously challenges to the classified documents case that are completely frivolous, dignifying arguments that really would have made no sense to any other judge. And then finally, the most recent ruling in which she says, tell me about jury instructions about the Presidential Records Act, which would enable, like one jury instruction was, isn't it the case that Donald Trump has complete power to determine what's personal and what's not, and that power is unreviewable? That is a question that is essentially directing a verdict of acquittal for Trump. And it's also an instruction that makes absolutely no sense. The president can't use nuclear secrets for wallpaper in the bathroom with the chandelier in Mar-a-Lago just because he liked it. I mean, he just doesn't have that authority, the former president. So he could move to recuse her. I watched on television where another former prosecutor, Chuck Rosenberg, said that that wouldn't be a good look for Jack Smith. The time is past when Merrick Garland's DOJ should be concerned about how things appear and get into actually moving these cases.
Nancy Gertner, before we leave this case and this topic, it's almost never happens that what you're suggesting should happen from an appellate court does happen, meaning an appellate court taking a lower court judge off a case.
It's certainly not usual. It's certainly not usual, but it can happen when it is an extraordinary remedy. There was a case in Texas, for example, of a judge that kept on being reversed in a death penalty case. And ultimately, the Fifth Circuit said, enough is enough, we'll take her off the case. It certainly, and it has happened before in the 11th Circuit in a case that I think it is Joyce Vance, the former prosecutor, had been on. So it could happen. And, we're dealing with an extraordinary situation. I can't emphasize enough how unusual what she is doing is. From an administrative level, not even setting a trial date is extraordinary. I mean, that's a 2-minute decision, and then dignifying arguments which Trump's lawyers are clearly throwing up for the sole purpose of delaying, and she's going along with it. So her finger is clearly on the scale here.
Her finger is clearly on the scale, but I naively...
We said she was nominated by Donald Trump.
Yes.
I don't know if we said that.
And
okay.
you would think she'd be humiliated by getting criticized coast to coast, but apparently she's not. She just keeps going. But the thing that's been so upsetting to me is not just her, or not just she, I guess I should say, but the Supreme Court. Because how you could possibly argue that it's a good thing to go into an election with a case not yet gone to trial about immunity of a president whose lawyer says it'll be okay for SEAL Team 6 to go shoot political opponents, that isn't a bigger disgrace because, my goodness, they should know better, and that's where we could be.
Well, they do know better. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Our faith in the judiciary, I think, or mine anyway, has been nearly shattered by what's gone on in recent months.
I mean, that's really troubling. So let me answer the questions differently. I mean, I resist, and I've resisted on this program, saying Trump judge, therefore biased, because that really, sort of fundamentally undermines the judiciary. I was appointed by Clinton. I didn't hand him a victory, assuming he was even in cases in front of me. I don't think that there is usually a one-to-one correlation between who appointed you and what you're doing. Judge Cannon is a different category here. Judge Cannon has shown, not by who appointed her, but by what she has done, that she is either not up to the task or that she is biased, just by what she's done. And I think that that's really important. The Supreme Court's scheduling is astonishing to me. During the Trump administration, if you recall, there were cases that the Supreme Court would take from the district court for an expedited appeal, bypass the appeals court, and go directly to the Supreme Court. And we were all flummoxed at the kinds of cases they were taking. I mean, the Muslim ban went up like a shot, and numbers of cases have bypassed the appellate courts. The notion that this is not one of those cases is extraordinary. Now, one could say, well, if the issues are really complicated, maybe they want to take the time. This is not a complicated issue. This is really not a complicated issue. We're talking about the notion that not that the president might be immune for the former president for something he did while he was president. The issue is whether he's immune for these allegations. These specific allegations, and these allegations are attempting to undermine the certification, attempting to put in false electors. In other words, there may be an immunity, one can imagine, for something that the former president does, but the measure in this case is what he's accused of doing in this case and whether he should be immune for that. And there isn't a judge that has looked at this that has said that this is a real thing. So the Supreme Court taking this amount of time, understanding as they plainly do what the implications are, is extraordinary.
Well, let me just add to what you're saying. We've said this before, with you and without you. The cases that they've had before them that benefit Trump move quickly, like the disqualification case out of Colorado that they threw out. This immunity case, where arguably they're not going to be helpful to Trump because it's more than likely they're going to say he doesn't have this kind of immunity. There's not even oral argument for another month till the end of April. So I think...
Right, and we talked about on this show, that the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals took more time than anyone expected because they wanted a decision that would clearly embody the views of everyone on the court. We had heard through back channels that it was not just the 3 judges on the panel, but those 3 judges had actually conferred with the rest of the court to make sure that what they produced would be something that all judges agreed with. So a very fine court judge, a very fine court of appeals found what they found, and this court needs to take essentially 2 months to consider the issue. That's really troubling, because that was a choice they did not have to make.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. No classified documents trial date out of Florida. No trial date for arguably the most serious charges around insurrection things because of the immunity appeal pending. April 15th, though, I guess here's the good news. Well, here is the good news. The judge in this case, Merchan, has decided that what you call the hush money case, I prefer to call the attempted election interference case by Donald Trump. Not only does he set the trial date earlier than the prosecutors even agreed to, by 10 days, April 15th, along the way, he eviscerates Todd Blanche, this lawyer for Donald Trump, essentially for cooking the books on alleged prosecutorial misconduct. This April 15th thing, unless something catastrophic happens, the trial's going to start, right?
Right. I mean, this case is very straightforward. The issue of the documents that hadn't been turned over by the U.S. attorney appears to have been something that was not the state prosecutor's fault. And the odds are, just sort of looking from 30,000 feet up, that the documents that hadn't been turned over are documents that are versions of what the state already had. Now, bearing in mind, that case will go, but that is not the strongest of all the cases. Right? I mean, Michael Cohen has issues as a witness, and the cross-examination of Michael Cohen will be, very aggressive. Stormy Daniels has issues as a witness, and her cross-examination will be challenging.
Why? What are her issues? I know Michael Cohen is a convicted liar and went to jail.
Right.
What's the problem with Stormy Daniels?
Jeffrey Toobin wrote a piece about her. Again, this is just to be. This shouldn't be totally damning, but about money that she owed her prior lawyers. There probably were versions of things she said that they can cross-examine her with. She's not the poster child for the best witness in the world, but it'll be up to a jury to decide. In other words, there were a host of reasons why the U.S. attorney declined and why the former DA declined to prosecute this case. And, they may have to do with the credibility of the witnesses. Not that we believe that they're incredible, but what the nature of the cross-examination would be challenging.
One question we raised the other day, I can't remember with whom, maybe it was Andrew Cabral, that, for those who don't know Nancy Gertner, while she was a brilliant federal court judge, she was also one of the top lawyers in America before she went on the court, and she's in the same boat once she retired. We talked the day after a judge said that John Eastman, who was the architect of this, how do we illegally overturn the election scheme, should be disbarred. We went down a list the other day of Trump lawyers, indicted, convicted, pled guilty, disbarred. What is in the mind of a semi-crack lawyer in some cases, and a non-crack lawyer in some cases too, when they decide to work for a guy who, in the best case, you won't go to jail or lose your license, but you won't get paid. You may lose your license, and you may go to jail, or at least have a criminal conviction like Sidney Powell and others do out of Georgia. What's the mindset, Nancy Gertner, in your estimation?
Well, I think that they were blinded by the power. I mean, they thought that two things. One, they thought the attorney-client privilege the kind of would inoculate them. They thought that the role of an attorney in being a zealous advocate would inoculate them, that there were somehow no limits to that, and there are limits to that. And maybe they were counting on the former president's continued prominence. But I mean, I think in part it's my former partner, Harvey Silverglade, in his defense of John Eastman said,
right.
Yeah, that said that, these were all things that he did in the service of his client. This was zealous advocacy. Sure, I know zealous advocacy, as you know, as well as anyone, but there's a difference between misrepresenting. There's a difference between, raising issues that you know to be untrue. The Harvard Law School and law schools across the country are sort of dealing with the concern that how many lawyers have done things in these cases that are so troubling. I think you just thought that you were inoculated because as long as it was somehow situated within the role of an attorney, that zealous advocacy covered everything, and it really doesn't.
Talking to Nancy Gertner. I'm sorry, Nancy. Judge Gertner.
Just one quick aside. I would say last Monday we were anticipating the foreign presence not be able to come up with this bond, $545 billion, whatever it was, million, $500 million, and that Letitia James, the Take No Prisoners Attorney General in the state of New York, was going to be talking about eyeing 40 Wall Street and eyeing his properties. And then, of course, the appellate court reduced that amount of money to $175 million. I was surprised. You are our legal expert here, Nancy Gertner. Was that surprising, or was the $500 million inflated and shouldn't have been required?
Well, that's what the appeal is going to be in part. The appeal is going to be on the, on the grounds for the verdict, whether or not he inflated his income and his assets. But I think, again, it's interesting. These are judges who are working very hard to be fair. Yeah. And I think that that's a court that said, we don't want there to be an impediment to an appeal here, and we'll work very hard to be fair. Now, if this had not been reduced, all that would happen was that his properties would have had liens on them. Correct. From the Attorney General, his name would have been taken off things. So I think, it's very interesting. There are numbers of judges involved in this case who are splitting the difference, who are bending over backwards to the former president in so many ways.
That's working well.
I think of all the people that I represented for whom the courts were never this generous. And I think that that's part of it. It's sort of bending over backwards, not to be seen as piling on. And, I don't think it was an unreasonable thing to do. I think the judge in the Fannie Willis case, the disqualification case, was doing the same thing. No, she should not be disqualified because, after all, she wasn't sleeping with the enemy. She wasn't sleeping with the defense. Right. She was sleeping with a guy on the same side. Yeah. So how did that affect anything? And if there were issues, there were disciplinary issues. But then he writes a decision which trashes her. And it's like, well, she's not going to be disqualified. The bottom line is X. But, man, I'm going to go through pages and pages of how terrible she is. That's very troubling as well. I do want to say one thing about money, though. I'd like to be paid for this gig as much as you were paid for when you were a reporter, Marjorie.
That's right.
$15 a story.
There you go. I would love that.
Judge Gertner, we only have a couple of minutes left. You were pretty close with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and even those who admired her immensely after the fact were upset that she didn't choose to retire earlier under a Democratic president. And since she didn't, when she died, Amy Coney Barrett ascended to the Supreme Court and obviously helped change the balance of the court. The same sort of conversation is happening now around what person I think is a brilliant jurist, much younger, only 69, Sonia Sotomayor. And not a huge call, but a call by some to say either Donald Trump may be the next president, or even if Joe Biden is the next president, there may be a Republican majority in the Senate, which makes it impossible for anybody good who Biden would nominate to get confirmed. Where are you in the Sotomayor should retire issue?
I don't know is the answer. I'd love to say something funny but I really don't know. First of all, there's a risk that the Republicans will figure out a way, even though they're not in the majority, to slow down a subsequent nomination. And then you're going to wind up with a vacancy for whomever the new president is. Second, although she is older, she's a superb justice. So that doesn't make any sense. She's a superb justice, and since she's younger than I am, I think she's very young.
Can we just, for those who've forgotten history, it bears mentioning again that the brilliant but nauseating Mitch McConnell blocked even a hearing on Merrick Garland from Obama because it was too close. What was it, a year before the election?
Right.
Yet moved rapidly the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett, even though voting in America had already started. And she was confirmed. I mean, it's
Wasn't
just.
it October 26th or something like that?
I don't remember the
I read that
exact
this
date.
morning.
It
Yeah,
was,
just a few days.
It was weeks after RBG died.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I people who know more about the politics of the Senate have to persuade me that the Democratic majority is capable of delivering replacement as soon as possible. I don't know. I don't know whether this will work. I mean, I thought since there's so much criticism about Kamala Harris that if she could be proposed for the Supreme Court and get through very quickly, and there'd be a new vice president. This is me talking politics, about which I know less than law.
I don't think that's true, but go ahead.
That would be very interesting. That would be interesting. But I think that it's a risky strategy. It's a very risky strategy unless you think that there can be a nominee. By the way, given what we know about Merrick Garland, the notion that his nomination was stopped is all the more outrageous. He has been judge-like as Attorney General. Mm-hmm. And balancing and on the one hand, on the other hand, the notion that he was a threat to anyone on the Supreme Court is simply absurd.
By the way, we just got a text from Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. They think you're a great judge too, Judge Gertner. I want you to know. So a lot of people in that. No, that's actually not true. Judge Gertner, it's great to see you as always. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Judge Gertner, for being with
Nancy
us.
Gertner.
We've been speaking with retired federal judge Nancy Gertner. She's a senior lecturer at Harvard Law School and a Boston Public Radio contributor. Thanks again to Judge Gertner. After the new news, we're going to be joined by...
Not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Mass General Brigham Health Plan. With you every day. For more information, you can visit massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. On A New American Masters, discover the life and legacy of former U.S. Senator and diplomat Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who waged a decades-long fight to end national poverty. Watch Moynihan tonight at 9 on GBH 2.
I'm Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Boston Public Radio. We'll start the noon hour with GBH's Callie Crossley on Beyoncé's Midnight Landing. And it's Live Music Friday with Donna Musicale. North Korea is waging war.
Partners Foundation to discuss the local response to Haiti's humanitarian emergency. And our annual moldy pre-Easter chestnut, Peeps. Do you love him or hate him? Never want to hear us talk about them again? Call or text Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Federal money and resources are starting to flow to Baltimore 3 days after a cargo ship collided with the Francis Scott Key Bridge. NPR's Joel Rose reports authorities have started working to clear the wreckage from the Patapsco River.
The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is bringing in 2 massive cranes to begin removing thousands of tons of steel and concrete that are blocking the shipping channel to the port of Baltimore. Maryland Governor Wes Moore says clearing that debris will not be easy.
When you have a chance to see that wreckage up close, you fully understand the enormity of the challenge. This is an incredibly complex job.
The Biden administration has directed $60 million in emergency funding to Maryland, but that's just a small fraction of what it will cost to replace the bridge. Authorities in Maryland have not offered any estimates, but civil engineers say it will take several years at a cost well into the hundreds of millions of dollars. Joel Rose, NPR News.
In Russia, authorities have made another arrest in the attack on a concert hall that left at least 143 people dead. NPR's Charles Maines has more.
Yesterday, Russian authorities arrested what they say was the suspected financier of the attack. 8 others are already in custody, including 4 of the alleged shooters. Most of these men, and they're all men, are from the Central Asian nation of Tajikistan. Yet earlier this week, President Vladimir Putin said he was primarily interested in who ultimately hired these people and again blamed Ukraine.
NPR's Charles Maines reporting. Kyiv denies any involvement in the attack, and a branch of ISIS has already claimed responsibility. President Biden was joined by former Presidents Obama and Clinton at an event last night in New York that raised $25 million for Biden's campaign. NPR's Franco Ordonez reports the expensive haul shows Biden's financial advantage in his campaign against former President Donald Trump.
The Biden campaign called it the most successful political fundraiser in American history. More than 5,000 people bought tickets to attend the party at Radio City Music Hall in New York. Comedian Mindy Kaling hosted. Lizzo performed. Stephen Colbert, the late-night host, moderated a talk with the 3 presidents. Obama touted Biden's policies and said, unlike Trump, he had a positive message to share about America. Clinton talked up Biden's economic moves, as well as his efforts to try and work across the aisle on tough issues like the border. Meanwhile, the Trump campaign is promising their own historic night. Trump and the Republican Party are teaming up for a fundraiser in Palm Beach next week. They expect to raise $33 million. Franco Ordonez, NPR News.
An inflation gauge closely tracked by the Federal Reserve shows price pressures easing gradually. The Commerce Department says prices rose 2.5% in February year over year. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu has announced that the City of Boston is awarding $375,000 through 3 grants to 2 critical community organizations that directly serve Boston's transgender and non-binary communities. Wu says the grants, known as the Transgender Emergency Fund, will aim to improve trans and non-binary residents' access to affordable housing, to public health and mental health resources, as well as legal support. The MBTA is making life a little easier for low-income riders. The T's board voted unanimously yesterday to cut fares in half for individuals making less than $29,000 a year or less than $60,000 a year for families of 4. And a last-minute change at the board meeting expanded the fare policy to low-income riders who rely on the T's paratransit system, the RIDE, but live outside of its core service area. Kathy Paul with the Mass Senior Action Council says those are the riders who need it the most.
The people that face the highest costs and rely most deeply on the RIDE. We're the only low-income users left out of the proposed fare reduction.
The low-income fares are expected to roll out in the coming months. T officials say they'll benefit more than 60,000 riders. In sports, the undefeated Red Sox, that's right, they're in first place right now. Play Seattle again tonight. It's a 9:40 start. Rain near 50 today. A lot of sunshine, though, for tomorrow and Easter Sunday. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indiana University, committed to moving the world forward and working to tackle some of society's biggest challenges. 9 campuses, 1 purpose, creating tomorrow today. More at iu.edu.
Eastern Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Thank you very much. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, and we are here every Tuesday and Friday, and now we've added a third day. Wednesday, we're here as well. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined now at the desk by Callie Crossley. Callie, of course, is the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley. You can catch that Sunday nights right here on 89.7 at 6. You can also hear Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. She's also the co-host for GBH's The Culture Show, which airs daily at 2 o'clock right here at 89.7. We should have said this earlier. For everybody here, everybody in the neighborhood, on Fridays, they broadcast live from the Boston Public Library at 2 o'clock. either stick around. It's a really fun show to watch, or come on down. Callie, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hello, Callie Crossley. Thank you for joining us. So, big cultural event. Beyonce's Cowboy Carter is here. We got her version of Dolly Parton's Jolene. We got her version of the Beatles' Blackbird. I guess Willie Nelson pops in. Jim's heard a bunch of the songs already. We got a clip here from Beyonce and Miley Cyrus.
It's my favorite so far. I love this.
Two Most Wanted. Here it is.
It's great. It's great. How many of you listened to this so far? 27 songs.
Maybe 10.
Me too.
Yeah,
10.
yeah, about 10. Yeah,
what do you think?
Yes. Oh, well, she's another blockbuster. Not that they needed to be able to buy another small island, but they can now because it's incredible. It really is. And the breadth of the types of country music are really quite something. It's displayed on this album, and then of course just all of the collaborations with folks, and then all of the other people behind the scenes, the musicians that are so well known, that she brought in. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, the controversy, there was a controversy that Beyonce shouldn't be doing country music. I don't know why she can't do country music, but she herself says it's a country album. It's a Beyonce album. Has it settled down, or are people still complaining about this?
No, some people are still complaining about it, but for a lot of people, they have no sense of the history. The history is that country, as is known by most people now, is very white presenting, but its roots are in black music. All of the musicians will tell you that, but that's where it came from. She is Texas. She is Southern. She has always been country, and they had a fit when she appeared with the Chicks in 2016 on the CMT's Awards for the song that they were covering of her country song called Daddy Lessons. And she's spoken back to this. This is country. This is not country in the way that you all want to do it. This is a Beyonce album, and all I can say is it's a real live boogie.
What's also great? I mean, beyond the fact that we've both listened to 10 songs. There's not one that I don't think is great, to use a double negative, I think. But I love the event. It's sort of the only thing I can analogize. I know Taylor Swift's the biggest thing in the world, but remember when Harry Potter books came out?
Yes.
And kids with their parents would stand in line at bookstores at 11:30 at night to get the book fresh out of the boxes, kind of thing. I woke up this morning at 5 and I went right to Twitter. I'm sorry, Elon Musk Twitter, and you see all these posts like at 12:03, 12:06. The exultation was like palpable. It was really great.
Well, more than that, some people, in different parts of the world, it dropped early. So in New Zealand, people were trying to follow it from New Zealand to be the first to know all of this. I mean, she's a marketing genius, or somebody on the team is, because she's been teasing. She started with the 2 songs of the Super Bowl, and then she moved from the Super Bowl and dropped the album cover. Then she just dropped the poster with all of the collaborators and everything on the back. And then the drop at midnight, beginning in New Zealand, that's pretty savvy. There's many ways in which you can learn about it.
And we should say we expect to have her on the show on Tuesday, so we'll talk to her about it on the...
She called earlier this morning. That's right.
We said we were full today, but maybe Tuesday we can squeeze her in.
Exactly. Yeah. So moving on to something that was a horrible case, a very, very sad case. Young man Terrence Coleman suffered from mental illness, schizophrenia, according to his family. He was not coming in from the cold. Yeah. His mother was very concerned because he would not come into the apartment from the cold. She called 911 hoping for help, and then things went horribly wrong. What happened here?
Well, he ended up dead is really what happened, and there were the police officers, in a struggle to try to I don't know if they could figure out what was going on. I mean, she said that, she made it plain that it was a mental health situation. But what we have here is are 2 things that are ongoing. First of all, as many police officers have said, they're not equipped really to handle these mental health situations. That's why a lot of advocates have said, let's get some people who actually know this, working with them. So when you get a call like this, you have somebody who actually knows how to respond, and don't put the cops in a position. They're there to do the work that they're mostly trained for. I know they have some hours in training on this, but that you're not equipped to handle a mental. You don't know that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I keep talking about this, and you do too, Marjorie, about how many cities end up settling for huge sums of money because they did not do what they could have done to prevent this, or there were, bad decisions made on the scene. Somehow the officers in question get off, or nobody thinks anything of it, and then the folks who suffered sue and win because this is incorrect.
Yeah.
So.
$4.7 million.
So this to me, as I've said many years, and so have you, taxpayers need to wake up and say, hey, we can avoid this kind of stuff much, if you just want to go on a money thing, much cheaper. Let's have somebody work with the cops about mental health. Let's make certain that there's a proper training for these kinds of tense situations. I don't know when that's going to happen, but this kind of thing, I mean, if we added up all the payoffs that Boston had to make, they run into the a lot of millions.
And you know what else really sent me over the edge about this story? When the U.S. District Judge who handled this, Mark L. Wolf, he's handled a lot of very notorious cases around town. He was seriously, a story to the Globe, Shelley Murphy, great reporter, said he was seriously considering holding the city liable without a trial because its legal department failed to turn over evidence to lawyers representing Coleman's mother as the case languished for several years. We are one of the most closed up states in America about records that should be reasonably and immediately as soon as they're reasonably.
The most closed up state
Thank
in
you.
America.
The most closed up state.
Right.
That's another disgrace here.
Right. Well, again, back to the money, if this is what gets people's attention. The city paid Hope Coleman's legal team more than $700,000 for the expenses it incurred while battling the city over its failure to turn over the evidence. Now, come on, people.
Let me say two things. One thing, in defense, at least forward-looking, of the city, either Mayor Wu or the police commissioner told us, I can't remember who, they have started adding mental health professionals to teams of cops. I don't think in the numbers even they consider adequate. The other disturbing thing about these cases, and my apologies, we had an exoneree on the show who was in jail for years, who waited years and years and years after spending decades in jail for the city to ultimately resolve his case. The pain, the extra pain that is caused for cases that obviously their lawyers know they're going to lose in the end or there wouldn't be a deal is unconscionable. And by the way, this is not a reflection on Wu or Walsh or Manea. It's been a disease that has infected Boston. And to some degree,
cities.
My city also,
in
Cambridge,
Europe,
And I hope and we'll discuss this with Mayor Wu next time she's on, but it's good. But when you read the quotes from the mother here about losing her kid, it's just so painful. And they could have mitigated the pain to a small degree by resolving this more quickly.
And to know that the bottom line of this, she reached out to them for help.
Yes, for help.
For help.
Yeah.
In any case, we have some good news. We discussed this actually in the morning show with Paris and Jeremy this morning for a bit. The T-board has voted that they will lower fares, cut them in half for a certain piece of the population, people of a certain age, people of a certain income, that sort of thing. And the part of the story, I hate to be my usual negative self, but it fits. Part of the story that stuck with me the most when I'm reading the Globe, whereas the paragraph where they say, and this is a paraphrase, most other major urban transportation agencies have had low fares in place for more than a decade. So in any case, but this is a really, it's a really important thing.
It's huge. I mean, I think it's as big as the free buses
I do too.
Which, when Mayor Wu proposed that and then instituted it, everybody's, ooh, it's not going to work. Okay, so.
Ridership is exploding on those three bus lines, by the way.
But that was the response. You recall that. So this is just, there can't be enough said about how important this is for individuals making less than $29,000, for families of four making less than $60,000. This fare adds up tremendously.
Hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year,
come on. And, we all, if you don't know, the cities with the public transportation that works, all right, no comments here. We're trying to make ours work, are the ones that really do well generally in terms of drawing tourists, in terms of maintaining communities. I mean, it's very important. It's not, even if you don't have to use it, this is a very important piece of infrastructure that you want to support.
You know, the one concern I have here, and I hope it doesn't come to pass, Phil Lang, the head of the T, who hopefully we will have back again to take listeners' questions like he was kind enough to do once, said Maura Healey has in her budget funding for this. He said even if the legislature doesn't come up with the money, we'll come up with it. Well, you read in the Globe this morning, they have a $628 million deficit. This is going to add somewhere from $23 million in year one to 60-some million several years out. If the legislature doesn't come up with the money, and they have a tight budget too, and they often don't do what needs to be done, I worry that the T is going to say we are all in intellectually, but there's just too much of a deficit and we can't do this thing. So I hope the vote becomes a reality despite the horrible financial situation.
We'll end up having more discussion about that congestion pricing that New York is about to implement.
Oh, yeah. They did. In June, but they voted the other day.
So, I mean, that's a real possibility, too.
We're talking to Callie Crossley.
So we've been talking a lot about book bans, DEI cuts, don't say gay laws. Washington's governor, this is another place where we haven't entered, but there are, and 6 other states have moved in the other direction. California, New Jersey, Colorado, Oregon, Nevada, and Illinois, not us, but it's basically mandating that the schools include curriculum about real American history, about LGBTQ rights, about civil rights, about all these things. So
I mean, it's at this moment a drop in the bucket, but it's really necessary. And I don't know who, I say this all the time, I don't know who they think they're fooling, the students, even though they are in the moment of learning. No, if you're not telling them the truth. And as many students who've been interviewed say, I'm not so fragile that I can't hear what happened that wasn't good and put that in the house. I mean, that's the whole point of this.
Well, I think that's one of the most ridiculous arguments, that white kids are going to start feeling traumatized and guilty to hear about racism in America. I mean, I
can we get back to your first point? There's 7 states that have affirmatively done it. No. And so why, when they read about, not that they should have to read about this, see that Washington State is doing that, in light of the fact that virtually every elected official in Beacon Hill professes they care deeply about LGBTQ questions, they believe deeply in diversity, why isn't this prioritized? And hold a hearing tomorrow, and by Friday, put on the governor's desk a bill that makes us the 8th state to care about people who are vulnerable, who we want to wrap our arms around. What?
Because we have the slowest legislature in the country. We don't do anything here in Massachusetts unless people have a gun to their head, which is almost literally what happens.
Let me ask this question. I believe I asked it a couple of weeks ago. Why, when it would seem to be something that would be important to move ahead to improve the Healthy Youth Act and allow cities to opt out if they had an issue with it, why can't that get passed?
That's a very good point,
Can we stay on this topic for just a second?
Yeah.
We all agreed the term revenge porn is a horrible term for this legislation. Everybody knows what the legislation is. Do people in the audience know we're about to have a law against that in Massachusetts? People in the audience know how many states had such a law before us? Anybody know? Only 48 other states decided to protect people, overwhelmingly women. 48 states, and then we finally decide we will deign to do the simplest
and
the
reason
most
it's a horrible name
acts.
is because it implies that everyone is engaged in pornography, which they are not. It's just people that were in relationships before and their ex turns on them
without their consent.
Without their consent.
Right, exactly.
Without their consent. Yes.
In any case, so here's some good news. I would argue Ronna McDaniel is unemployed. Now, can you tell us who Ronna McDaniel is? What her job was for about a minute and a half, and what happened to her, Callie Crossley?
Well, she was a commentator for NBC, possibly MSNBC, though they said she wasn't going to do that. She was the former head of the Republican National Committee, and she was one of the hugest proclaimers of an election that was rigged, that Trump was robbed, that all of this was horrible. And yet NBC, a news organization, which has been saying all this time that is not true, that is not true, that is not true, and here's the evidence, hired her to do commentary. Well, that blew up because a lot of the higher profile folks who are on the air there and people not on the air stood up and said, you cannot hire somebody to do commentary who has stated for the record that this was a rigged election. How do you expect to have, she was hired to sort of bring some color to the election coverage. How can you have constructive election coverage with somebody who has already said the 2020 election was rigged?
Yeah.
And Trump is the second coming. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
And that the mainstream press
Right.
is all fake news,
Right,
and she's
right.
about to go on the mainstream press and draw 300 grand.
I would argue that you're positing it as good news that she eventually lost her job because the people spoke up about it, and other people outside of the organization did too. Here's the thing: she was about to make $300,000, and she's going to get that money. I just don't understand why she won't. They have to pay her out. She worked for about a minute, and she now has $300,000.
I know, it's incredible. You get it not even working.
Yeah.
Usually you have to work for a while before you get the big payout. But you know what? And you know what else I was saying this before the show, Jim? That I was surprised that one of the people that thought this was okay was a former editor of the New York Times. You would have thought she would have learned at the New York Times.
But wait, by the way, why should you? Why should you be surprised? I mean, two things.
Yeah.
One, we should celebrate. He couldn't be on yesterday. He'll be on next Thursday. Chuck Todd was the first lead voice on this issue. On his former show, Meet the Press. By the way, I forgot, Phil Lang, the head of the T, is joining us on Friday, April 12th. Thank you for telling us that.
Yeah.
That's one. And two, mainstream news is littered with former Trump people who maybe they never said the election was stolen.
Yeah.
They were fine with imprisoning kids in cages in Texas and separating from their families. This what's the term? The blank tour, the rehabilitation tour that a lot of these Trump people are trying to do so they can have jobs in the future is being abetted by mainstream news media that should know better. They shouldn't be on.
Well, at least they've changed their tune.
For personal survival reasons.
I mean, all I can say is, if you had a nickel for every one of these black people they unearthed from some sewer to talk about to be a sellout, they make sellout look, good. I mean, it's really ridiculous. And I'm so offended by it because there are, across the political spectrum, say what you will, you don't have to agree with them, there are some thoughtful people who may have a different political perspective that you can hire.
A lot of them.
Totally right.
You know what I mean? You can hire these people. They're out there making thoughtful, constructive criticism that you may not agree with, but there you have it. And there you go for these people. Please help me.
Okay, what's under the radar? Sunday night, 6 o'clock here on GBH.
Well, we're doing two, I think, one fun story, one important one. We're taking another look at the community fridges. There used to be 30 during COVID. Those fridges that are in communities.
Yes.
It's just a stopgap measure, but it's so important in the communities in which they are. Now they're down to 10. And just a reminder that there is hunger in Massachusetts, a lot of it, and has not been filled by those organizations working very hard to help people not be hungry and to know where their next meal is coming from. And these are in a community efforts to serve their neighbors. And it's a really important story, and I hope people support that effort. Second part of it is, I bet you didn't know that the NBA had fashion show. They have a huge fashion show. All of these big NBA players, including a lot of the Celtics, are big fashion people.
I'm not
and
surprised.
it's become huge. So we thought it's March Madness. A lot of those college kids that are playing now hope to be in the NBA, and they will be sporting the goods shortly.
Oh my gosh.
So it's based on Mitchell Jackson's book called Fly.
We talked about this. Yeah.
So it's really amazing, the detail of what he got in his book about how the fashions have changed and how important it is, and how that tunnel walk is now really a runway.
Before you go, I mentioned earlier that starting, I think it was 2 Fridays ago, every Friday at 2 o'clock, the Culture Show does live from the library. How do you like doing it in front of a live audience here?
Oh, I love a live audience. I always like a live audience.
Doesn't it change the whole feel of the
Yeah, it's always, well, I'm good with my compatriots, Jared and Edgar, in the studio as well, but I love a live audience because you get to watch people's faces or hear them groan or,
they are.
or
Hear them
whatever.
groan.
Whatever.
Hear them groan.
Hear them.
Okay.
2 o'clock today,
Yes.
Culture Show live at the Boston
As I
Public
said earlier,
Library.
it's a real life boogie.
That's exactly. Beautifully put. Thank you.
We're speaking with GBH's Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, Sundays at 89.7 GBH, right at 6 o'clock. You can also hear Callie's commentaries Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. And she's host of the aforementioned GBH Culture Show, which airs daily right here today right after 2 o'clock news at the Boston Public Library. So you get 4 hours here of GBH today at the Boston Public Library. Callie, thanks a lot. After a quick break, it is time for Live Music Friday on Boston Public Radio. This week, we heard them this morning. These guys are great players from the fabulous Donna Musicale. That is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
As a cargo ship bore down on Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge early Tuesday morning, first responders scrambled to make sense of the scene.
10-4, I think everybody that was on that bridge is in the water, sir.
I'm Elsa Chang. The Baltimore Bridge collapse from the point of view of first responders on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Direct Tire and Auto Service. The team members at Direct Tire want to thank all their clients for 49 years of business. Tires, brakes, and complete auto repair. Direct Tire and Auto Service. Not just service, customer service. And Dandelion Energy, committed to helping reduce the use of fossil fuels by providing geothermal home heating and cooling solutions to homeowners across the Northeast. More information at dandelionenergy.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. You're in for a real treat with Live Music Friday. Next month, April 11th through the 14th, Donna Musicale and Rumbarroco. Yeah, easy for you to say, my friend. Will be performing the music of Baroque-era Morenas. Thank you. That one I'm close on anyway. Women of color living in Spain in the 16th and 17th century. They've taken that music, filtered it through the group's distinct Latin styling, creating something really entirely new and fresh. Here with us now, Donna Musicale and Rumbarroco. That was pretty good.
Yeah,
Close enough.
pretty
That
good.
wasn't that good. I know it wasn't. Larry Gutierrez, along with standing member and mezzo-soprano Daniela Tosic, will repeat. But for information on the April shows, go to ladm.org. Welcome to both of you. Great to have you.
We're thrilled to have you. Well, elaborate on what Jim just said, Larry. How does this? What is this whole thing about?
The concert La Morena is based on some songs that we found in Spain. These songs talk about dark-skinned women. That's the definition of morena. And these are polyphonic songs that were popular then. They were part of the Hispanic Renaissance canon. And we haven't heard them in the New England area. Actually, I will push it even in the United States that much. But in addition to unearthing those beautiful songs that have a special meaning for us at the moment, especially for people like Latinas and anybody that is not white, we spice it up with the Latin Baroque rhythms. And what we're trying to do is revitalize early music. You know, you go to the concerts and how many times can you hear the same kind of pieces
Over
or the
and
same
over.
rhythms, which I love, but we just added a little bit of a spice. Not too much piquant.
Danielle, how'd you get involved in this operation? We should say Laura was the founder.
Yes.
Larry is the founder of this thing. You're a later comer.
Well, I had a good fortune to go to graduate school with Laurie, and we remained friends and colleagues ever since. So when she started Rumbarroco, first I was singing in La Donna Musicale.
You have a beautiful voice, by the way. I know you know that, but
Thank
you do have a beautiful voice.
First, I was involved in her 17th century women composers project of La Donna Musicale, and then she started Rumbarroco, and she graciously invited me to partake, which I couldn't believe my luck. So here I am.
You know, unlike Marjorie, who understands Baroque music, she's going to say, no, I don't. But yes, you do. My sense of Baroque music, until I heard you rehearsing, this is not my grandfather's Baroque music. So explain that a little bit.
Well, that's the point. Your grandfather needs to be coming into the 21st century.
Okay, yes.
Well, when we go to schools to do outreach, we cannot really bring those kids into the 21st century if we don't build a bridge. So we're building a bridge with the music that they hear now and the one that was heard in the past. So it is Baroque music. It comes from that period. And also, I take the opportunity to say we're playing with historical instruments and we're playing with folkloric instruments.
Oh, folkloric music.
Yes, like we have the Venezuelan harp, and we have Eduardo playing the Venezuelan harp. Yeah, we're so lucky to have him, indeed.
You know, I was saying to Jim before, we can't really see this, but you can because you're here with me. We think of, Baroque music, the Bachs and the Vivaldis and stuff. And you have this woman in Baroque ensemble with a cello between her legs.
That's a viola da gamba.
Is it viola?
Da gamba.
I'm sorry.
Just like mine, the one.
Exactly, right. Yours.
Well, anyway, you would just not think of that because you wouldn't think of a woman in that kind of period garb with playing a cello. So it seems like the whole thing has got two strikes: the dark-skinned women and just women.
You got it. That's exactly it. That's our reason for existence. And La Donna Musicale first began exploring the women composers, European women composers, that is Italian and French, some German. But we don't have really compositions with the name, Maria Gonzalez. We have anonymous pieces and we have the pieces written by male composers. So, but we could get the subject of women, put it in the forefront. The song that we're going to sing today, Daniela is going to sing, talks about, is spoken in first person. Yo soy la morena, la morenita. So I am la morena. This sense of pride.
Yeah.
And that's, Renaissance, Baroque. We have not seen that, and that's what we're bringing into the forefront. People have listened to Bach and Vivaldi, and we all love it. But we want to add something, especially here in New England. The Hispanic community is very large.
Huge.
And so we want to bring them into the classical forefront.
You can bring a few white people in while you're at it, too.
Absolutely.
Daniela, there's a really controversial line in this first song. Is there not? Can you describe that to people?
So there is, one of the verses in this song is a direct quote from the Song of Songs, which everybody knows comes from the Bible.
Very steamy part of the Bible.
So it talks about, I am black, and then there's a controversy. Is it but beautiful and beautiful? The jury's still out. It's not for me to tell you one way or another, but I am singing the verse with "and beautiful." I am black and beautiful. I made my own personal decision to go that way, just because it resonates more with me, and I think it's more accurate.
Okay, but you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yes, because what happens is that we have to go a step back. The Song of Solomon is written in Hebrew, is my understanding, and we have Nama who can read Hebrew, and she read it for us. And what happens in this manuscript for Yo me soy la morenica is that it's translated into Latin, as it was translated for many antiphons and many pieces of religious. So it was translated from Hebrew to Latin, and in the translation, then they use the word but, translated into English. We read the Latin. So you see, we have to go back to Hebrew and see if it was but or an.
But she made her decision.
But she made her decision and it's hers.
So before you both go over and play and perform, and then you're going to rejoin us, do you want to, Lowry, do you want to introduce your fellow performers, if you would?
I am so honored and delighted to be with my fellow performers. We have here Juan Sebastián Sánchez from Colombia. Now, you see him playing the folkloric instrument, but he is scheduled to audition for a major symphonic orchestra. So everybody here has double training. We are training in classical music, but we also know our folkloric music. Then we have next to him our maestro Eduardo Betancourt, a multi-instrumentalist and Grammy winner. You will be delighted to get to know him. And we have, not any less, our American representation, Kirsten Lamb, who is very well versed in improvisation and jazz. She actually went to school at Oberlin College to study early music, and then went to New England Conservatory. And oh my God, I am so happy that she's with us. And then we have another American representation, but she does speak Spanish. No, then don't get it, you know, she's not gonna fool us. We have Julia Connor, who also is trained as a classical musician, but she has her own ensemble who does a lot of improvisation and is a very particular. I will invite you to get to know them.
Before you go over there, what instrument are you playing again?
I am going to be playing the viola da gamba, not the cello.
Sorry.
You do put it, you know, in between your legs, which is, you know, we associate in between the legs cello. But this is a viola da gamba. It has more it has frets, it has more strings, and we hold the bow like this.
Oh.
And then I'll be happy to show the audience, or if you come to the concert, also at the concert. I also will be playing a folkloric instrument called the cuatro. It's a Venezuelan cuatro, because there is also a Puerto Rican cuatro, which we don't have today. But we have it in our CD, so you can hear it there.
You know, you're not only a great musician, I heard you play, you're a hell of a saleswoman, I should say too. So you want to gently put your headsets down?
Gently.
Can I say something in the interim? Not only do you get to hear this incredibly beautiful music, and Margie's going to tell you how to get tickets, they are generous enough that if after they perform, if you go to Aiden, our colleague right there, he will give you a code which would allow you to go to the website and get free admission to one of their concerts. Again, Aiden right there, and I think after you hear the music, you're going to want to do that. We're so thrilled to have you. Take it away.
y por mí se cantará. Yo me soy la morenica, yo me soy la morena, yo me soy la morena. Sin ser quemada ni de que al fuego tocara, que a los otros tocara, que a los otros tocara. Yo me soy la morenica, yo me soy la morena, yo me soy la morena.
Music of Donna Musicale and Rumbarroco, and I want to tell you about the show. It's April 11th through April 14th. For more information, and to book tickets, go to ladm.org. Those are the letters ladm.org.
Can I, before you do this, I'm going to butcher this, but I've got to read it. Becker Barrios is watching on YouTube. And you know where he's watching from? Venezuela. And he says, Es Marvelioso. He's very happy,
yeah.
And it was Marvelioso. It really was. It was fabulous.
Before we hear the second song, I wanted to ask you. You mentioned that a lot of this music that was written by women was anonymous. What was the process like to discover all this music? It had to be somewhat involved.
Well, there are some people that are like archaeologists of music, and those are musicologists.
Archaeologists of music.
Archaeologists
Wow.
of music. And they do a lot of groundbreaking for us. And there was a Spanish musicologist from, I would say, 3 or 4 centuries, not centuries, but decades ago, that compile a lot of these villancicos. And the Spanish government is doing an amazing work putting this into modern edition. But what we did that was different, that's the Spanish music in general. So what we did is to put it all in one theme. The theme of Morenas. And so we had to see what was there. But because we are historical performers and we are somehow archaeologists too, we go to the source. We go to the manuscript and compare what's there with what's new, or we always have to make our own scores. So the process is one of finding first the theme, what we want to convey. And the important moment, historical moment that we're living is that the word morena implies so much diversity because it's not white, it's not exactly all black, it's all those shades.
Yeah.
So we started to do some videos in our social media explaining and putting samples of what I am a morena. Mm-hmm. You see, and so that's how we bring into a program. So in the concert, you will hear secular music, but there will be one religious piece where they use this Nigrasum as an antiphon to compose the piece.
Now, Laura, we're going to talk to your colleague in a second, but you have to rejoin your colleagues for an instrumental piece. What's the second piece we're going to hear?
The second piece is actually a fantastic piece called Sarambeke. And what is interesting about this piece is that the thing is, how do things get to us in the 21st century? So a guitar composer in Spain transcribed these pieces. We don't know if he wrote them, but we find this piece called Sarambeque. So we go to the dictionary, a period dictionary, 17th century, and it says these dances, the Sarambeque, are dances that the blacks dance. And that they are very alive and they are very fast. And so we take that song, and it's very interesting because since you're a musician, it has an accent not on the downbeat, but on the second beat. And that has a lot of implication for later music. And so by looking into this, we are getting to the roots and also finding that maybe the African culture had more influence on classical music than we are able to notice. And so in this one, so because we're Venezuelans, we play the piece as an early music ensemble. It was written for the guitar. We arranged it for our ensemble. And then, because it has that accent on the second beat, we find a piece in our Venezuelan canon of folk music that's called joropo, seis numerado. And so we play our piece. So you heard the historically informed piece once, and then you will hear our Venezuelan piece with improvisation from the harp and the violin. And then, with that rhythm of the joropo, we play the early music piece.
Fabulous.
So,
why don't you go join your colleagues and we'll talk to Daniela for a second. That's, thank you. It's not necessarily a salute. I just want to make sure we get it in.
Okay. I think we're almost ready here.
Give the website again, and you should mention the Aiden connection.
Donna Musicale. Yeah, Aiden is doing something. What is Aiden doing?
If you want free tickets, he will give you a code. You have to approach Aiden, who's somewhere over there. There he is. Can I ask you one question? How long have you been singing?
Oh, I lost track, but 4 decades.
Oh, you have? Oh, my God. So exponentially singing more work from women composers than you were, I assume.
Yes, definitely.
How's that feel?
It feels great. It feels like I'm finally doing the repertoire that should be heard out there that is not, for whatever reason. It's too short of a show to go through those reasons. But yes, I do a lot of women.
4 decades, unbelievable.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to hear La Donna Musicale and Rumbarroco, and they're going to be playing a second piece, the name of which is...
Mbeke.
Thank you. Here they go. Donna Musicale and Rumbarroco. And speaking with the group's founder, Lori Gutierrez, and standing member, Daniela Tosic. They'll be playing their show, More and More Morenas, across Greater Boston, April 11th through April 14th. For more information and to book tickets, go to ladm.org. That's the letters ladm.org. Thank you so much for being with us.
It's fabulous. Thank you. And again, if you're in the audience and want free tickets, go to Aiden. He'll give you a code, and you get to hear them again, fuller, for free. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, up next, GBH Executive Arts Editor, the Culture Show host, Jared Bowen. He's with us to tell us about what's going on all around town. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH.
This week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, COVID-19 worsened the hunger crisis. Today's rising food costs made it worse still. Food subsidies and food pantries can't feed all in need, so some Greater Boston neighborhoods provide free community fridges. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Comcast Business.
Hey Bologna, executive producer of Boston Public Radio, and this is 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We are here every Tuesday and now every Wednesday and every Friday. We're joined now at the desk by Jared Bowen. As I eat, by the way, a spicy Jared from the Newsfeed Cafe. Spicy Jared Bowen is GBH News Executive Arts. Well, that's how it has its
Very
name.
spicy.
Executive Arts Editor and host of the Culture Show. It airs daily at 2 o'clock right here on 89.7 and live at the library, including today, every Friday. Hello, Jared Bowen.
It's a really good sandwich, isn't it?
It is a really good
It's delicious.
sandwich.
I've had it before.
It is a spicy Jared,
Very
actually.
spicy.
Thank you.
Okay,
It's a
so
little
we
embarrassed,
got
obviously.
criticized last week, Jim, for spending too much time talking about Rose Hanbury, the Marchioness de Chumley.
Exactly.
Remember her?
The Marchioness of Chumley.
That's who it is, exactly.
Can we hear that one more time?
The Marchioness of Chumley.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Yeah, okay. We were criticized because there was wild, unfounded speculation that she might be carrying on the Marchioness with the future King of England, husband of Kate Middleton. However, Rose Hanbury, the Marchioness de Chumley, is back in the news yet again. What's up?
She is back in the news. Well, now I'm paying attention. I had kind of missed some of this. I knew there was this dialogue about
the Marchioness,
with the Marchioness having an affair or something. But now she's often depicted lounging about her big 19th century or earlier than that estate, and she's lounging on furniture which Chinese social media has taken off on that was probably looted during this century, as it's called, this century of humiliation from 1839 to 1949 in China, where Western countries and looters came into China and took millions of artifacts, many of them from the Summer Palace, and they were from families which she's affiliated with because her husband's grandmother was Sybil Sassoon, and they were known as the Rothschilds of the East. And so it appears that some of what she's sitting on might have been looted, so it makes her even more contemptuous in the eyes of many.
So what's happening with that? Is this one of these return kind of deals? Or
Well, I think they need to, it's our favorite word, provenance.
I do love that word.
They need to start doing an examination and figuring out, because some of this is actually in the collection of the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, and it's on loan, I guess, to the family. There's an arrangement there, so I think that there will be scrutiny. So I think the family is probably pretty upset that this conversation about her and William is now turned into
Have we
this art
heard
history
from the Marquess de Chambly?
I knew you were going to do this.
Where's
We
the
just found out that the
She's
husband
the Marchioness.
we know who he is.
And he's the Marquess. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, actually.
He's been very mum about the whole situation.
Well, you know why? Because they found Will's DNA on one of the Chinese pieces. That's unconfirmed.
Jim Browdy.
No, there's rumor.
That's outrageous.
By the way, DNA can come from your skin. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
what you
Or hair.
Or
Okay.
hair. That's
All
what I
right.
meant to say.
Speaking of skin.
You know what's interesting, though? I realized that, so Sybil Sassoon is her his grandmother, and she was no, she was depicted in the Sargent show that was just at the MFA.
Ooh.
But it was really interesting because her husband Philip Sassoon was in the Sporting with Gender section of that exhibition about Sargent in portraiture, which we just had here, because there were rumors about how he conducted himself in society, and
really?
his fingers were kind of splayed, so there were suggestions that maybe he wasn't as masculine as was demanded.
His fingers were splayed
in that kind of society.
What does that mean?
What does that
Splayed
mean?
fingers.
Well, you'll just have to. It's up for interpretation.
We should ask the Marchioness.
So, yeah, she might have something to say about that.
So before we leave this, I know we had this discussion before, but I forget what the answer is. When did this whole provenance thing take hold? And it should have ages ago, but obviously there's like a, not quite a tsunami, but it's more, you were the Marchioness of Chumberley.
Can we hear it just one more time?
Okay,
before we
one
leave?
more time and one only.
Oh.
No, I talked over it. Just make her happy.
Okay.
Play it.
The Marchioness of Chumberley.
Okay, that's it. We're never playing it again. Play it one more time. One more time.
The Marchioness of
Okay,
Chumberley.
that's enough. Thank you.
You don't know what
When
Rose
did the-
could be
okay,
up to
fine.
next week.
Marjorie, enough.
First it's the
Okay,
husband,
fine.
now
When
it's the
did this-
furniture.
When did the provenance
What is happening right now?
You know what just occurred to me? Didn't we discuss with you that in the Manhattan DA's office, the same office that is prosecuting Donald Trump in the election interference hush money case, don't they have like 4 or 8 full-time prosecutors who do nothing but provenance stuff?
I mean, they're kind of the clearinghouse for this because they have people who have been chasing down this for a while. There were people who trace it back to Baghdad and a lot of the objects that were looted out of there. So they have this whole team that knows exactly what they're doing. So they've built this investigative enterprise, and because so much of it goes through New York and the galleries and the museums, that they're able to chase all of this down. But
I think they should go to the Marchioness's house, like at midnight. Break down the door and take the damn. What were you going to say? I'm sorry. What were you saying?
I've
Who
lost
knows?
the
Whatever.
thread.
So
You didn't mention where they live.
Where
they
they
live
live.
in Houghton Hall, the 18th century estate in the Norfolk countryside, where she lives
I'm
with her
sorry.
husband.
Who are we talking about?
The Marchioness of Chumberley.
Thank you. I forgot. Just nothing makes Marjorie. If you don't know Marjorie well, if there's a dumb joke that she gets into, you can say it 5,000
I don't
times.
know. I just love the
It's
way
one of
that
your
woman
best
talks.
qualities, I should say.
Okay, but we're moving on from
We
that.
are, sadly.
Yes, we are. There's been all these horrible stories about what's going on in the Harvard morgue, where the people donated their bodies, and then those bodies were not treated with respect. But there's this other story now about a book with human skin in the library at Harvard.
Yeah,
it's not been a good year for Harvard in general.
No,
has
it hasn't been, and so they're definitely correcting course. So there is this 19th century book which was written about the human soul, a French book, and it was bound in human skin because its author believed that since this was about the human soul, it should have a human connection. And the problem with this is that for years, Harvard has kind of treated this book as a joke and treated it lightly or used it for sensationalistic purposes, like new testing has been developed that, yes, proves it's actually human skin. Well, they know more about it and perhaps have known more about it. And the person whose skin it is was somebody who was in a French mental hospital. And so very wisely, they have now unbound the book and they've taken the skin and are trying to figure out a way to bury that in France and treat this for what it should be, that these are human remains and it's not a joke. It's not a method for getting PR headlines or newspaper headlines with public relations. But yeah, coming on the heels of what they've just been through, and we're looking at Harvard having acknowledged that they have 20,000 human remains in its collection. This is not unique to Harvard. This is a number of museums throughout our country in their collection. They have people in, with Harvard, they have 6,500 Native American remains, 19 African remains for people who were likely enslaved. So this is no longer a laughing matter. Not that the remains ever were, but I think they've recognized that this needs to be dealt with seriously and humanely and respectfully.
Okay, so Marjorie hates quizzes, so I'm going to ask you a quiz question. Who is George Walton and why is he relevant to this conversation?
I do not know.
Who is James Allen and why is he relevant to this conversation? I'll give you a hint of the same person.
Same person. Yeah.
Do you remember,
this
what's
is
the
a
name of the guy
different-
from Atlas Obscura who was on? One of the four brothers
I think this
from
is
Brookline?
a different kind of, for
Oh, no, it is
F-O-E-R,
not.
different situation
I
in
know
that
what you're
he
talking about.
volunteered.
This is, well, he was like a murderer or something. The guy's
Right.
a big-time criminal. He wrote a memoir, and his book
at the
Athenaeum is covered in his own skin.
Right, but
what's the difference?
Because he said it was okay with him. That's different than taking somebody else's skin.
I've thought about that too. I've seen that book in the collection of the Boston Athenaeum, and first of all, to my knowledge, as long as I've known about the existence of that book at the Athenaeum, they've never done what Harvard has done and kind of trotted it out and used it for headlines. But the difference is that that person very willingly wanted their skin to be on that book, where we don't even know the identity, necessarily the name, because there hasn't been a name assigned to the person from the French mental hospital whose skin now binds that book.
Let me just say one thing, just to clarify. There are rumors, I just saw the text, that one of the families considering skin-covered books, and it's totally untrue, is who? The Marchioness de Chambly. And I just wanted to be clear that it's a nasty rumor and it shouldn't be spread.
It's another conspiracy theory.
It's another horrible conspiracy theory.
I thought you were going to say Donald Trump.
I'm not going to say that. Yeah, Joshua Thor is one of the co-authors. He's a Brookline kid. He's the one with the all-time memory, right? He can memorize the phone book or something. In any case,
that's
Atlas
a great
Obscura,
book, actually. It's got all sorts of wonderful facts about the world, and a lot of them are in Boston, and they're really kind of neat.
Okay, so Message in a Bottle. The bad news is I think it's closing tomorrow.
Yep.
But I didn't know about this this sounds fabulous. Message in a Bottle, obviously Sting. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Kate Prince is an Olivier-nominated choreographer in Britain. That's the equivalent of the Tony Awards there. She's been working in the realm of dance and really dance theater grounded in hip-hop dance for a really long time. And like many people around the world, she saw that image of a drowned boy, a refugee boy that had washed up on shore, and rocked her out of her world to figure out how what she could do to address the refugee crisis. And so she came up with this idea of message in a bottle, listening to the music of Sting, never thinking in any realm that she could work with him. But she reached out to his team, said, I'd like to do a piece that tells a story of the refugee, the migrant experience in the world right now. I think that your music would be perfectly blended with that. Sting got right back to her, said absolutely.
Isn't that incredible?
He even re-recorded some of his own songs as it related to the police too, so that she could go through and choose about 20-something songs that would help tell the story. And it's all framed around one family's experience, having this joyous life where they are, and then having to migrate, and the subjugation, the humiliation that comes with that. But it does move along so that there is a hopeful ending. And again, all told through the music of Sting, which can often be very uplifting and very positive and very, very lovely. And the thing that distinguishes Kate Prince as well is the fact that she really hires her dancers who can be as much actors as they are dancers. So it really is this very evocative experience that she brings to stage. And it's on stage right now at the Emerson Colonial Theater.
Just through tomorrow, though.
Just through tomorrow.
Okay, King Hedley II, we weren't sure if we discussed it with you.
We just read about it.
We clearly discussed it with each other. We didn't talk to you about it.
This sounds incredible.
Did we or did we?
I can't remember if we talked about it either.
Let's talk about it again.
We should, even if we did, we should talk about it again, because it's one of those shows that you just stop what you're doing and get your tickets now, because it's exceptional. So August Wilson, we've talked about him before in the show. He wrote a play about the African American experience for every decade of the 20th century before he died pretty young. I think he was just in his 50s, perhaps a little bit older. But this play sets us down in the 1980s, and this is looking at trickle-down economics. It's the Reagan era. All of his plays take place in Pittsburgh. We find a community that is dealing with a lot of violence in their community. They're dealing with economic woe. And just like many of his works, this is about conversation. This is the brilliance of August Wilson's dialogue, is that before you know it, you feel like you're sitting down there in the backyard with them, eating, listening, almost ready to engage. And this production, King Hedley II, is so well acted. It's superbly well acted. It's magisterial. The direction from Summer L. Williams, extraordinary. And so this is a longer one of his plays. It's about 3 hours, but it is just so tight, and all of his characters really working through these issues of their community. It also harkens back to Seven Guitars, which is another play that he had written. I think that one was set in the 40s, and it was presented by Actors Shakespeare Project last year. This King Hedley is presented by them this year. It's playing at Hibernian Hall in Roxbury. Just a phenomenal production.
That's April 7th. It's there till April 7th. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I will say, don't take my word for it. I'm part of the Boston Theater Critics Association. We've named this a critics' pick, which means the majority of critics decided the same.
Now, this is an odd story. apparently the censors in North Korea have an issue with the dungarees that are worn by a British gardening show host.
Yeah, this is
the jeans.
This is so interesting because this video surfaced of this gardening show, a British gardening show being shown in North Korea, and the guy's down in the dirt. He's a very well-known British broadcaster, television personality, but it's all blurred below the waist. You think, well, is this man not wearing pants in the dirt? But no, he actually is wearing pants. He's wearing jeans. But this goes against the 2023 order in North Korea, the Reactionary Ideology and Culture Rejection Act, which lists the things you can't do, like broadcast television with anybody wearing jeans or a T-shirt with Western words on them.
That's right.
Because it's seen as introducing Western culture into North Korea, and they don't want that at all.
I love what the host said. He told the BBC that censorship like this had given him some street cred. He says, "I've never seen myself as a dangerous, subversive imperialist, arranging flowers as I do. I'm generally regarded as rather cozy and pretty harmless." So actually now he says he's got some street cred since he was viewed so nefariously by the censors in North Korea.
Well, speaking of North Korea, didn't Kim Jong-un send a, quote, beautiful letter? Didn't Trump say he got a
beautiful letter?
Beautiful letter.
It's a beautiful letter.
Beautiful letter.
Perfect
letter. Yeah, what?
Next time he steps over that border, Donald Trump better not be wearing jeans because that won't go
well.
You see
also, Donald Trump in jeans? I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
No.
Go, what are you going to say?
Long hair, that doesn't fly there.
Really?
Yeah, they have a whole skinny jeans, that doesn't fly. Again, I mentioned the T-shirts, dyed hair, that doesn't fly. But at the same time, Kim Jong-il is using Ford transportation.
He's dead.
And
Kim
loves
Jong-un.
Kim Jong-un and NBA basketball.
Oh, Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman's his good buddy.
So
Can
they
we
pick
go
and
from
choose.
North Korea to South Korea.
South Korea, yeah. That was, Well, I'm totally into this. By the way, I know it's online. I was a real Squid Game obsessed person.
Couldn't watch
don't
it.
do that. It's not. No, it's stylized violence.
Okay.
It's not like
everybody gets shot in the head,
Scorsese
basically, by the
film or
dozens.
something,
It was really fun.
No, but they were. But it's not that kind of.
No problem.
It's stylized kind of deal.
Okay,
fine. Who's Donald Trump with in this photograph here? Who is that? Okay. Marla Maples. Okay, I don't know why we're looking. He looks really good in that. Oh, he's in jeans. Can you put that up there? I mean, this is really a travesty. Okay.
You know what? He doesn't look good in jeans.
No, I would say not. It doesn't.
Marla looks good in her
sort of the
short pants.
Well, Barack Obama doesn't look that good in jeans either. I'm not sure that.
Okay.
Whatever. Okay, the South Korea thing.
Yeah, this is an extraordinarily fun
I want to see
show.
This badly.
First of all, they did something really interesting with this. You walk. This is at the Museum of Fine Arts. It just opened. It's on view through July 28th. You walk down the stairs into their exhibition gallery, and you're immediately met with PSY, Gangnam Style, and that dance that just took hold in the United States.
That was the first billion time viewed song, I think, ever on YouTube. I think it was.
Yeah, and of course recreated everywhere. So right away you're met with this wave of Korean culture that has worked its way around the world. And then you walk into the show and it tells history, it tells culture, it tells movies that all rose out of Korea. And they've constructed it as a kind of choose your own adventure exhibition. So you walk in and decide where you want to go. Do you want to go to the movie part? Do you want to go to the dance part? Do you want to go to the fashion part? But to back up a little bit, this is a really fascinating story about history, too, which I didn't realize. So you had Korea, which had been occupied by Japan, then beset by the Korean War. They have a picture from 1978 of this plowed field when Korea was very economically depressed. Next to that, they have what it looked like just a few years ago is a teeming city, all these buildings, all these lights. So this is a country that has just risen up and just gone around the world in very short order. And they created companies like Hyundai, which was a construction company that became into the car manufacturing company. LG was a cosmetics company doing face cream before it was doing technology, Samsung. It's a country that when it saw Jurassic Park, the year that came out, the box office was bigger than the money that Hyundai was able to bring in. That's when they began investing in film. And they sent film around the world. So you see a recreation of the Parasite bathroom. You see the Squid Game costumes. But also K-pop, of course, has risen up and become huge. And so we see all manner of videos. We see their costumes worn on the stage. We see this fabulous fashion. It is so much fun.
Where is it again?
This is at the MFA. And you can dance.
What are you doing? I would say that's debatable.
I want to see you two go over there and dance. They have a K-pop.
She can really, by the way, she can really dance.
I can really
she
dance.
Can
That's
really
right.
dance.
Yeah, back
it's
in
true.
the day, I really
No,
was.
I've seen you in whatever.
They have a K-pop challenge. And then you can go, and then you'll be on the video for everybody else to see.
I'll be running over there to do that. So, what are you doing on the show in exactly 46 minutes?
In 46 minutes, we'll be talking about, of course, Beyoncé. The album dropped. We'll talk a lot about that. And this really interesting David versus Goliath story. What? That Italy is cracking down because they don't like the way that the David statue is being depicted on all manner of things that are sold. We've talked about this before. Copyright, it usually extends only about 70 years after the artist has died. We're talking centuries now, and they're actually able to kind of crack down on...
Isn't that a great ad for them, though?
Yeah.
So why do they want to crack down?
We'll talk more about it on the Culture Show.
Okay,
so before you go,
hey, we're going to end the show discussing, I would argue, one of the most important topics in America. Margie doesn't agree. Peeps, pro or con? Are you pro or con Peeps?
No,
I'm with
definitely
you.
con.
Disgusting.
Explain why. I mean, I'm with you, and I think Margie. Why?
Beyond the fact that they're gross.
Besides, they're gross.
That's right.
They're grosser.
There they are. We have a bunch of them over there.
Yeah, I see. No,
we read a great description this morning. As they taste like when you try to describe them to somebody who hasn't had them before, it tastes like a marshmallow rolled around in sand.
Yeah,
and that really is.
Yeah, and you can't just buy one. You have to buy whole packs of them.
And we have a whole pack.
That feeling when you bite into them, which is horrible.
Okay, well, that's good enough. Thank you. We'll be watching 2 o'clock right here at the Boston Public Library. Jared Bowen.
Okay, yeah.
Spicy
They
Jared
do make
Bowen.
nice noises. We've been speaking with GBH News Executive Arts Editor and host of The Culture Show, Jared Bowen. The Culture Show airs daily at 2 o'clock on GBH 89.7, but it's going to air at 2 o'clock right here at the Boston Public Library. So if you're in the library now, you might stick around and see The Culture Show live. Okay, after a quick break, we're going to talk about the unfolding horrible tragedy in Haiti and what a couple of local activists are doing to try to ameliorate the situation down there, get help to people there and to families who are already here, who've come here from Haiti. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
I'm Arun Rolfe. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, as advocates celebrate the T's new fare discounts for low-income riders, some are warning about its financial future. Pro-Palestinian advocates are holding an interfaith rally at Faneuil Hall to protest the war in Gaza, and local congregations are getting ready for Easter. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for our programs comes from you and Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Mass General Brigham Health Plan, with you every day. For more information, you can visit massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And Owens Corning of New England, helping homeowners create living space using the Owens Corning basement finishing system for over 20 years. More information at ocboston.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browder. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. As political instability continues to roil the nation of Haiti, how is Boston, home to one of the largest Haitian American populations in the country, responding? We're joined by two women who can help us answer that question. Former State Rep Marie St. Fleur is here. First Haitian American to hold public office in the state. She now runs St. Fleur Communications. Marie, it's great to see you.
Good to be here. Thank you, Jim.
As is Marlene Amadi. She's co-founder and president of the newly created Haitian Community Partners Foundation. Marlene, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you both so much for coming in. So the news coming out of Haiti has just been heartbreaking. What is the latest? What is going on down there, Marie St. Fleur? Where are we today?
Well, as I understand it today, we're still in the middle of the violence that is occurring, particularly in Port-au-Prince, right? The gangs have taken over. That hasn't shifted. The lack of security, there are concerns around potential issues around famine because the supply chain is totally devastated. So we're not being able to get food, we can't get medication. And I know Canada and perhaps the United States is also airlifting their people out of there, getting their folks out of there. So it's a dire situation. And yeah.
You know, Marlene, this is a subjective analysis of what we've heard the last few weeks. I mentioned on the air that a UN official was saying this is about to become the worst humanitarian crisis on earth. And we talked about it, Margie and I, off air, and it seems to me, at least in this country, we can't focus on two things at the same time. There's so much focus, as there should be, on the situation with Palestinians and the humanitarian crisis there, that it seems to me that Haitians who are living through a humanitarian crisis of their own are getting short shrift here. Am I off base, or do you think that's a fair analysis?
Your observation is right. So I think it's both have to be addressed at the same level, because the same humanitarian help that the Afghanistan needs, we need it as well. So in Haiti, we are in the next level. We can say, I can compare what's going on in Haiti right now, the same thing as Rwanda. So it's a next level, because from January until today, from UN reports, we have 1,400 people have been killed, and in Port-au-Prince only. So imagine if in other town of Haiti, so it could be worse.
Do you have family still there?
Yes, I
do.
I do.
Are you in touch with them?
Some of them, yes, but some of them I could not, because of, it's not, the communication is not well.
And what do you, from those with whom you are in touch, what do you hear firsthand?
Some of them, my family members, so they left Port-au-Prince and went to the suburb in the countryside.
Port-au-Prince is the most dangerous of the...
It is. It is the most chaotic place right now for anyone to live in Port-au-Prince. And one of my family members that had, he used to run a boutique that sells different things. So people went there and kicked people out and burned the entire place. So it's not, it's very dire.
Do you still have family there, Marie St. Fleur? You don't.
Not immediate.
So give us a little bit of the history. I know the United States has been meddling in Haiti, not with good outcomes. But why has this things deteriorated so fast? Give us a little history lesson.
It hasn't happened so fast. It's been happening, right? Because the issue of gangs didn't start today. I mean, gangs have been being politicized forever, going back to the Duvalier regime, right? Going back to when we decided to invade in 1915. So Haiti was under American occupation from 1915 to 1934. And I believe it was the bank in New York, I think it was the Citibank, the National Bank in New York, who had some interest in Haiti and wanted to figure out ways to control what was happening over there. So they actually paid people to create chaos, which created the opportunity or the need for intervention, which caused Woodrow Wilson to send people in. My father and my mother were born under American occupation. My father was born in 1922. My mother was born in 1934. And they can, my dad was 12. He can tell you about some of the things that happened. So racism doesn't stop at the American border. So you think about 1915, 1934 in the United States, the impact of the racism in the United States, transfer that overseas where there are no controls.
So in light of that fact, what obligation do you think the United States government has, and what are they doing to help?
I think as Americans, if we believe in democracy, then it should start in our own backyard. Haiti has been in our own backyard, and what they can do, some simple things, which they've started to do, I would say, under the Biden administration. Late, but at least they've started. One, guns. Nobody manufactures guns in the inner city in the United States nor in Haiti. Those guns have been flowing back and forth. They have been used by politicians. They've been used by the privileged class and others in order to create chaos. Stop it. And we can. We can control customs. We can control the airways, and we can control drugs. Drugs have been another way, because it's being used not to simply impact Haiti, but the Caribbean countries around there, and it's a way of getting it into the United States. Those are things that we can control that will help the security in the country today.
How about in the private sector? We all know, we mentioned the other day, Partners in Health, which obviously is based here, has been doing the late fabulous. Paul Farmer obviously died a year or so ago, and they have hospitals there, and obviously some of them are even hard to deal with right now. Yep. Generators are not working, that sort of thing. Tell us, I should say, Marlene, first, tell us about your organization and tell us what the private sector, what individuals and organizations in the United States and in our region are doing.
So here organization is based in Brockton. So here in Brockton, we saw a flux of migrants that come from Haiti. So organization has been working with those migrants, providing them the support for them to integrate in the community. And also we try to reach out to politicians that work close with us to make sure they are aware of the situation in Haiti, how whatever impacted people in Haiti, it will impact us here. Because we are so close to Haiti. Mm-hmm. So we need to pay close attention to what's happening in Haiti. So why we don't see more people coming from Haiti right now? Because we don't have any transportation. So because there's no airplane, no way for people to move, that's why you don't see the migrant flux coming more and more for the past coming weeks from what's happening in Haiti. I think we as Americans, we as politicians, we need to take in consideration, so Haitian people need your help. We need your help in all levels. As Mary said, the gun, we don't manufacture gun. So how do we get so much gun in Haiti? So we in the United States, we can do something about it. We need your help to do something about it.
And by the way, if you want to help Marlene's organization, you have a gala on April 27th.
We do.
HCP, we'll say it again at the end, Foundation, HCPFoundation.org. Speaking of organizations, didn't you found the first organization of Haitian American elected officials in the country?
Yeah, and with the help of my colleague, Senator Linda Dorsina-Forey.
We've heard of her.
Yeah, you've heard of her. Yeah.
So what's going on with that? What are they doing?
The National Haitian American Elected Officials, we founded it back in 2005, honestly, to begin to pull us together to talk about the impacts of what's happening with us here in this country, and then the impact of what's our foreign policy in the United States. So what is happening? They've been spending time really talking to people on the Hill. But the thing is, I don't think it's influence. Decisions have already been made. The decisions that the United Nations have made have already been made. So the question is, how can we influence it to make certain that the Haitian voice, and that's not my voice, the Haitian folks on the ground, I haven't lived there, I can't tell them what to do, but they're telling you they don't want the kind of interventions of the past. They're telling you that they want a voice at the table. So if you're gonna send a military force in, we want to be at the table, we want to be part of that military force to tell you, to inform you, so that you can have some intelligence to go in there to do what's supposed to be done. So that's some of the work that we've been talking about. They've been working in the different states. We're elected in 18 states across this country right now. We have a couple of folks in Congress. So what we're saying is, look, you know what? Biden administration, the states need resources in order to take care of the influx of folks who are coming. They're not coming directly from Haiti, but they're coming through from Venezuela, from Brazil, from Mexico, and they're coming into our country. So we have to have the resources to support them because they're impacting our states, our neighborhoods, our schools, our public health systems, and so we need the resources to do that. That's what the National Haitian American Elected Officials Network is doing. We're going to be here on a number of them are coming in on April 27th to really have a sit-down, a workshop, and really talk about strategies
it's the
that
day
we
of the
can
gala.
deploy.
Are you aware of that? I hope you're all going to the gala.
I don't know.
Maybe,
so there it is.
Maybe they will call it the
I would
gala.
hope so. By the way, that's the voice. The first voice is Marie St. Fleur, former state rep, first Haitian American politician in Massachusetts to hold office. The other voice is Marlene Amadi, who is head of the newly created Community Partners Foundation.
You know, Marlene, the UN is talking about sending not sending, but the need for up to 5,000 police officers. Yeah. I don't understand, is that UN police officers? Is that even a good idea? And they're talking about, of course, stopping the gang violence and the killing.
But again, that's the same thing that we said. So those decisions has made for us.
Yeah.
And then we are not involved in those decision making. So therefore, if we were at the table, we will tell you what we need and how we can go about it and doing it.
But how do you create a table when there's no government? I mean, there was this talk about this transition council, and then ultimately that fell apart. I mean, who decides in Haiti democratically what you and Marie want them to decide? I'm not arguing with you. I'm asking you.
But at the same time, there's no government. It's yesterday. Mm-hmm. There have been government prior to that. So again, it's the issues that there have been, sort of government. But the issue is, it's not like we as a community, we as a country, we need to have a voice into what's happening in our country.
I hope so.
So can I lean into that again?
Sure, of course.
I mean, we've had different examples of that from the United Nation community. Kosovo, Afghanistan, Rwanda. So we've had examples of where the state has failed. Period. And it's been failed. It wasn't, it's been failed for a long time. What I want us to understand that in 1987, there was a constitution that was redone to decentralize and deconcentrate power in Haiti. Because what happened, all power was concentrated in Port-au-Prince. 40% of the population lived in Port-au-Prince. 79 to 80% of the businesses and all services came out of that space. And so if you were in another part of the country, you weren't getting any resources. So the Constitution of 1987, the idea was to do that. Unfortunately, the framework is such that the legal definitions for how they separated the territories were not very clear. However, it did do some good things, right? You have now, it wasn't simply about Port-au-Prince. You had the territories. You have 10 departments. Out of those 10 departments, they broke it down into districts, departments, municipalities. So you have smaller portions of government that's in place right now that's been operating despite that. So I say, let's look at the assets that exist. Why don't we begin to talk to them, because they're operating on the ground right now, bring them into the fold and use them as a way, leverage them in a way to support the intervention that is going to happen, whether we say no or not. And by the way, the people are dying. We've got bodies in the streets, cars being burnt, people being terrorized, women being raped, children being killed. Yeah, something's got to get done, but it can't get done the same way.
So if people are listening to this now and they want to do something, is it a question of sending money to certain organizations? Is it a question of calling their local politicians? Or what should people that have been very moved and upset by this do?
We should say, by the way, speaking of politicians, Ayanna Pressley is the co-chair of the Haiti Caucus in Congress.
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Marlene.
So I will say that we can do both. So we can lobby our politicians and make sure that they hear the voice of Haitian community. So here. And also, choose an organization that you want to support. So because not only that we're helping people in Haiti, but we're helping the new migrants that come here as well. So as a small organization, so who does not have the resources.
That would be the Haitian Community Partners Foundation.
Okay. Yes. So to help us continue the work that we are doing.
Do you have a website?
HCPfoundation.org. HCP
Foundation.
No.
.org.
Not F Foundation. HCP Foundation.
Thank you.
.org. And that's where you get tickets, Marjorie, to the gala on 4/27.
Thank you.
Where all the members of your organization are going to be going.
Dive me into it. There we go.
Is that not correct? Thank you very much.
Okay. So can I just add one other thing to that for those who can help? Because we have half of the population that are in shelters across Massachusetts right now are migrant families.
Yes.
We have a real issue. And the problem is we have a shortage of housing, not simply for people who've been here, born here, blah, blah, but for folks who are coming in. So one, if you have a home that you can help and think about how you can open that up in order to help people get into permanent space, that's important.
Who do you tell that to?
I'm telling all of the private...
No. I don't mean who you tell it to. Someone's listening, says, I have a home. I would like to help shelter house somebody on an interim basis. Who do they reach out to?
I think they need to call the Office of Refugees and Immigrants over at the governor's office and ask them to put you in touch. I think there are about 80 shelters across Massachusetts today, some of them on the urban and suburban communities, and reach out to them and connect. But I think start with the governor's office. Second, what I'd ask employers to do, because there's a workforce issue right here. We have a workforce shortage. We have bodies who want to be involved in workforce, but they don't speak English. We need to ask employers to think outside of the box. Having your normal job fair, people who don't speak English, I mean, nice, you'll see them, they'll show up, great. They may have work papers, but you have to be willing to problem solve and put yourself out to do it differently. So ask them to be looking at their practices and seeing how they're going to shift it. I think that's really important too. The third one is schools. We have children who have to go to school today who are very traumatized. And so if you are part of a mental health support, find out how you can pull in and help these families, because these children have seen some things that some of us will never want to see in life. How do we support them, and how do we work with the schools that they're going into to help integrate them in more successful ways?
And also, Mary, I will add on that, and volunteer. So you can volunteer your time. You know, English as a second language, we have a shortage of that. We need to teach them English. If you are a retiree, so please reach out to any Haitian organization so that you can volunteer and help us to help them with English as a second language.
Okay, so I want to be sure, CPF.
No.
Okay. Okay. You give me the web. I'll shut up here, and you say what the website is.
The website is hcpfoundation.org.
You got it right, Marlene. I want you to know. You got it exactly right.
To get more information. How about you, Marie? I know you're with St. Fleur Communications. Is there something that people can contact you? Okay.
Well, yes, they can contact Marie, because Marie is the one person that will bring all the other organizations together to make sure that we work together to serve the community the right way we're supposed to do. So Marie, as they said in Haitian Creole, she is a potomita.
What's that mean?
She's the beam in the house.
I think it's pretty obvious. We got it. You didn't need to tell us that, but thank you.
Yeah.
It's really good to see you both. I'm sorry under these circumstances.
Thank
Please
you.
come back again soon.
Yes, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you both of you. Thank you.
Take care now.
Okay, we have been talking with former State Representative Marie St. Fleur and Haitian Community Partners Foundation co-founder and president Marlene Amadi, and it is hcpfoundation.org if you want to get more information about how you can get involved and help stem this tide of tragedy in Haiti. Okay, now, I'm almost embarrassed to be moving on to this, but we are moving on to this.
I'm not embarrassed.
Jim insists upon this every Easter. It's another one of his mandates. A moldy chestnut, as we say. How about a moldy peep? Easter is this weekend, and so it's time for Jim to talk about how much he loves those marshmallowy, sugary, weird candies called Peeps in orange, pink, yellow. We're getting them up now. How do you feel about Peeps at Easter? Is basically the question. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, broadcasting live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library, co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Horwick III are here for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. It's no longer Texas Hold'em, it's Texas Show 'em, with Beyoncé dropping her much-anticipated album, Country Carter. And another big debut this week, the Coolidge Corner Theater raises the curtain on its expanded venue, a makeover that was 15 years in the making. We'll take on that and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you and the Museum of Science, where their new exhibit, Changing Landscapes, an Immersive Journey, transports you to iconic spots around the globe to see how people are adapting to a changing climate. More at mos.org. And the University of Massachusetts Amherst Mount Ida campus in Newton, connecting students and employers in Greater Boston and offering on-campus graduate and pre-college programs. Learn more at umass.edu/Mount Ida campus.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Brody and Marge Regan. We're broadcasting live at the library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Marjorie's embarrassed, or at least so she says, we're doing this. I'm not embarrassed at all.
Obviously not.
This is a really important issue for a lot of people, not just me. Mm-hmm. Easter is this Sunday, you know that, 2 days away, which means we're only 3 days away, 3 days away from discount sales on those beloved or despised, depending on who you ask, marshmallow chicks we know as Peeps. Thank you very much. If you want to weigh in, if you're pro or anti-Peep, you can call us or text us at 877-301-8970. I think we agree Peep is one of the country's most controversial desserts. Was it a dessert? Item, whatever the hell it is.
I would say it is.
If you
it's rather
love,
sweet, Jim.
If you love it, what about them does it for you? Is it that nuanced, stiff, almost brittle texture of the marshmallow, the chemical yellow neon sugar crystals that spill out onto your lap, or do you hate them because they're crap? 877-301-8970. 8970. It's always better if we disagree, but on these we agree. They're atrocious, right?
We have the Peeps here.
Oh, yeah, I think people know what they look like. Can you hold them up again?
Yeah, they're little. There they are.
Thank you. That's excellent.
There they are, just in case you don't know what they are.
Now, let me ask you another question. What we would also like, in addition to which side you're on in this legendary debate, whether you like Peeps or not, there are a lot of wonderful things you can do with Peeps.
That's
For
right.
example, a lot of people like putting them in microwaves, which I have done as well, Marjorie. So if you have any other thing you do with them that you find to be particular fun, please let us know.
Okay, we've been talking about microwaving. We have a little sound, I believe.
Who's that? Who's
about Jim and you and I and Christopher Muther, I believe.
When was this from?
It's from our show, Jim.
It is? Okay.
Yes, from a while ago. Jim in the microwave. Here we go.
The only good thing a Peep is good for is putting it in the microwave and exploding. And you got to just make sure it's somebody else's microwave.
Jim, some people have said the same of you. But anyway, I'll just keep going here.
I got to get in the microwave. So
Well, really,
thank
I
God.
have to thank Christopher for that image, what will stay with us for a long time.
I'm going to put a table talk pie in there, too.
Exploding.
It's really
In
funny.
the microwave.
It made Marjorie happy.
That's right.
877-301-8970.
But people feel very strongly about this, as you said. There are Facebook groups dedicated to Peep hate. Here's one from Angela Hill of the Oakland Tribune.
What'd she say?
She said that I like them intensely, and they know it, which merely bolsters their resolve. I can see it in their beady little food-colored eyes, their defiance, their sheer pluck. You can't just get one Peep, you know. They come in packs, one might even say battalions.
I think that's true.
And it's true.
Do you know David Hasty, our colleague, who was also our colleague at the old radio station?
Does he like them?
Well, he texted. He said, Peeps are fantastic. I hope the pro-Peep side gets equal time. This presentation, I assume he means you and me, is outrageous.
Yep.
The numbers, thank you, David.
Okay. Thank you, David.
877-301-8970. Okay. To show that we're not biased, we're going to promote something that we promise to go to every year and never quite get there. Who lives in Hancock, New Hampshire?
Cy Montgomery,
One of our
wonderful
favorite people on the
animal
planet.
expert. Yep.
What happens at the Hancock Town Library every Easter season?
They have a Peep diorama contest, and it's getting bigger every year, Jim. Bigger every year.
And you know, if you go to Hancock Town Library NH.org, oh, this is ridiculous. Just Google the Hancock Library and Peep, and you will get to see some of the exhibits.
They have hundreds and hundreds of Peeps marching on Washington.
I know
Isn't
they
that
do.
great?
It's great.
Is this for the diorama?
I don't know.
I'm not
Cassie
sure.
and Ashland, you were first on the Peep Hour here on Boston Public Radio. Hey there, Cassie.
Hey, good afternoon to both of you.
You too.
I have to, I am a huge Peep fan.
Why is that?
I've been for years.
Wow.
Although I'm not really crazy about the yellow and the purple, but my special interest is in stale Peeps. I love them when they're stale.
Yeah.
And just...
We get that every year, the stale thing.
Go ahead.
Yes, because their texture changes and they become very chewy. So because I am not patient, I decided I would experiment. And I learned that if you freeze them, you can have a stale textured Peep in about 40 minutes.
That is fabulous. That is such...
And
that
so
is... Yeah, go ahead.
Please try it. I would like you to experience that.
Well, it's beautiful that you shared that with our listeners. That is very kind and generous of you, Cassie. Thank you very
You're
much.
entirely welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, Dan in Watertown says, my mom used to send me Peeps when I was in college. They were okay if you smoked lots of weed before eating them. Then we have Mary Ellen in Rentham, the only good Peep, and people are very passionate
It's a
about
dead
Peeps. That's
Peep.
the thing. No, she doesn't quite say that. The only good Peep is one that's burnt to a crisp on
It's
a
like a
steak
marshmallow.
over a fire,
Yeah.
like made into a s'more kind of thing, so you don't have to see
Yeah.
them. You know, we have the pink ones and the yellow ones here, Jim,
Yeah.
but did you realize there are gingerbread Peeps?
No, that's not a Peep.
Lemon Delight Peeps.
Well, that's not a Peep.
They're Peeps. They're different
they're not
flavors of
Peeps.
cheese. Chocolate-covered Peeps. They're all Peeps, absolutely. And some people actually make Peeps Krispies treats, Peeps sunflower cake, and Peeps on pizza, which is called a Peep She.
Now, as you know, we are big fans of the
Oh,
internet.
no. I'm sorry. That's not what... You know what the Peep She is?
No.
It's faux sushi made of Peeps.
Really? That's fabulous, Marjorie. Now, as I started to say we love the international something of competitive eating,
Yes,
as you
we do.
know.
Yep.
You know, that's like where Joey Chestnut eats 400 hot dogs in 2 minutes. What is the all-time record, I looked this up this morning, for the number of Peeps consumed in 5 minutes? In fact, let's ask the audience. How many Peeps do you think the record is consumed in 5 minutes? Yell it out. Anybody? How many? Say something. How many? 3? What are you, crazy? Anybody else? Exactly. I have no idea what they said. 255 Peeps consumed in 5 minutes. How many peeps that is a second?
I don't, Jim.
That is a little less than 1 peep per 300 seconds. What do you think of that?
I think that's really impressive.
You don't care at all, obviously.
I'm reading the text over here.
Okay, what are they saying?
Well, the texts say, did you realize that Peeps are made with pork gelatin, ground up pork bones, skin, tendons, etc.? Absolutely disgusting.
Oh, you hear what Zoe
gummy
just said?
Candy has gelatin in it. So that means if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, you cannot eat it. And I would think
Zoe
twice.
sounded offended because you didn't know that.
This is a guy who proposed to his girlfriend in a Peeps suite at a local hotel. He had the whole thing decorated with Peeps.
Yeah.
I think you should reconsider.
Let me tell you something. I read that story and I said, that's a family I'd like to be friends with. Let me tell you. They are probably a wildly good group.
Was he dressed like a Peep, the guy that's proposed? I think he should have gone all the way and gotten dressed like a Peep. Let's go to Benjamin in Brighton. What do you think, Benjamin?
Benjamin in Brighton.
So I grew up right outside of Philly, and I don't know if Jim knows this, but there's actually a Peeps factory in Bethlehem, PA.
That's where they were founded, I think. Weren't they founded there? Yeah.
I think so.
Did you go to it?
Year, we got Peeps no, but it's even better. We got Peeps in our Easter basket 1 year as a kid. My dad looks at the label and sees that they were made in Mexico or someplace like that. So he writes a letter to the Peeps Corporation saying that he was very disappointed that he wasn't able to find any Peeps made locally in Bethlehem, PA. So nothing happens, and then a month later, we get a big box at our door, and they sent us an entire case of Peeps free with a little handwritten letter saying, we're really sorry, we just want to make it up to you. So we had Peeps forever.
That is a fabulous story. How come you never went to the manufacturing facility?
Well, I mean, the Peeps.
That is an
That's right.
excellent point, Benjamin. Thank you very much. By the way, one of our colleagues said we should call this Boston Peeps Radio. Can you put this beautiful photograph up for people to see? This is an AI version of me, not as unattractive as usual, surrounded by you-know-what, thousands of peeps. What do you got there, Marjorie?
Well, this person says, this is Laura from Duxbury. By the way, somebody just texted to say Bedford, Mass. Also has a Peeps diorama. They've had it for 10 years, yeah. Laura from Duxbury says, the yellow bunnies taste best. We put them on mimosas and rim the glasses for margaritas. And she thinks the fresh are the best. Yesterday, I had our fourth graders make Peep dioramas for a contest. We had a blast, and I guess they're going to put them on the margaritas or the mimosas for Easter Sunday.
You know what we should do to show that we're unbiased? How about we each take a bite?
I'm not taking a bite.
Peep? No, a little bite.
I'm not
little
eating
bite.
one of those.
No?
No.
How about a pink one?
No.
By the way, that's a rabbit. The pink ones are rabbits. You know that?
Pink ones are rabbits. Yeah, they're not.
Take a bite of that.
I'm not eating it.
Bite
Jim.
an ear.
You can eat them all.
Okay. You know who loves, by the way, in all seriousness, you know who loves Peeps?
Who?
Somebody you're fairly close with.
Is that?
Mademoiselle de Chambray. She does. Whoever she is.
It's the Marchioness of Chumley.
Her, too. Celeste in Hyde Park. We are really pathetic. And we know we are, so that's okay. Celeste in Hyde Park, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're talking Peeps. Hey.
Hey, Celeste from Hyde Park here. We cannot function without Peeps on our Easter dinner table. And when you're making your yams, you take the Peeps and use that instead of brown sugar and maple syrup. And it melts perfectly for your Easter yams.
So if you melt a Peep like in the oven, does it totally melt and ultimately becomes like sugar? Is that what happens?
What I do is I put it on a pan and melt them first, and then I take that sugar substance and pour it over my yams.
Really?
Wow.
Well, that's really sad, Celeste.
Well,
Thank
that's
you
what it's
for
made
telling
of,
us.
sugar and corn syrup. It's really
That's right.
nutritious.
And you can't function. You cannot function without Peeps at Easter in Massachusetts.
Wow, excuse me.
There you
She
go.
is really
She's
into
really
this.
passionate.
Celeste, thank
She's
you
passionate on
for
the subject.
sharing your
Some
passion.
people are so
Appreciate
excited
it.
about the discussion, they're texting to say they're running out now to buy some Peeps before there's a run on Peeps at the local CVS. Do we get these at CVS? Is that where we get
How
these?
much they cost, a little
I
packet,
don't know how
like
much they
6 or
cost.
something? I'm asking them, but you didn't buy it.
Well, the point is you can only buy, how many are in that pack there? What, 16 in that pack or something like that?
Whatever.
Yeah, you can't buy. You can't just buy one. As the person on Facebook said, you have to get battalions of them. That's the way it works. And
these are while Easter is the big thing. One of the things I read this morning, I think we read this last year too. They are a year-round kind of phenomenon, not of the magnitude that they are at Easter time, but apparently some people like them enough to have them year-round. Do you know that?
I did not know that, Jim. I don't know why you.
By the way, we got
them
3 whole whatevers of them for $7. So that's one thing.
It's a real bargain.
That is a real bargain.
Sandy from Westminster, what do you think?
Hi, Sandy.
I love peeps, and I'm well known as a peep lover. I often get them as gifts.
That's
when
really
I was
nice.
sick, several people gave them.
They did?
Them to me as gifts.
What'd you do with them, Sandy?
Original flavor.
Yeah.
I ate them.
And did you get sicker, or did you recover eventually?
No, they're wonderful. But I have a group of women. We play cards every week.
Sure.
And there's 3 or 4 of us that love peeps, so we always have peeps on the refreshment table. They're coming to my house tonight, and I have 3 boxes ready.
Wait, you mean even when it's not Easter, you have them on the table?
Well, if we can find them, it's hard.
Yeah.
They have like Halloween peeps, they have Christmas peeps, but they're not as available as the Easter peeps.
Right after Easter, they have a fabulous deal at most stores. You buy one, you get 1,000 free. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Very
Ethan
good
says
deal.
in his family.
Sandy, thank you.
They bought one to get 50% off, and then we all got. Oh, that was Jamie, not Ethan. Who got diabetes for free? It was either you or Jamie, one or the other.
Oh my God.
It was a joke. I get it, Jim, but that's why I thought I'd repeat it.
It was funny.
I thought I'd repeat that. People are texting Jim to say that they think it's time to retire the annual Peep segment.
Can I tell you something?
They've had enough.
That is not
listen
happening.
to this one. Cindy Rhode Island, she said she grew up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Oh.
And guess what they did on New Year's Eve?
They went to the factory.
Peep drop.
Really? Is that true?
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, instead of like in Times Square.
Oh, I understand.
The
The ball
dropping.
drops. I got
They had a
it, yeah.
peep drop there, right down like the fire, the pole in the fire.
Do you think I would have known that if you hadn't explained it to me? I think I would have. I think I would have.
I don't know.
New Year's Eve, the drop, etc.
People are really into the stale peeps. That's absolutely true. I guess that's the one thing you can get that is better stale than it is. I guess because the outside's hard and these are kind of soft
that's what I
outside.
thought. I thought it was a hard outside and a soft inside. That woman that called before that says she has figured out how to faux age them by putting them in the freezer.
Right.
She says it changes the texture of the whole thing, and they all become much more. What was the word she used? Whatever the word was, not crunchy, but something less.
Oh my
horrible.
God! Listen
What?
to this. Target was sold out of yellow, only pink and purple
We have
peeps
some.
left. We don't know which Target that was. Maybe that's the one in Watertown, or maybe it's one in South Bay too. Isn't there in Dorchester
I
now
have no
too?
idea. Now, Sean from the car is the only one who actually understands this, and I am open-minded enough to agree with him. Here's what Sean texts. My favorite recipe for peeps is to remove them from the package, which obviously you should do, and immediately throw them in the garbage, which I think is a very appropriate way to deal
about
with
the microwave thing.
Yeah.
What happens to peeps in the microwave, according to Kathy from Waltham,
They
is
get
that
bigger.
they expand to
They do.
8 times their size.
But then they explode.
And then collapse. But you can repeat this process multiple
Oh, I didn't
times
know
before they
that.
collapse into goo. So you can have a little game, I suppose, on Easter morning and re-putting your peeps into the
I don't
microwave.
think that's true. I thought that they expand, and there's a point at which they can't expand anymore, and they just explode, and they
But
destroy your microwave.
You have to wait before they get to that point.
Oh,
you
I
have to
see.
let them expand just a certain amount, let them collapse, and then you can repeat several times before they turn into goo on the paper plate.
Allison in Vermont, where I'm told peeps are huge. Hello, Allison. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm calling in regard to an annual Easter coloring, egg coloring party I used to attend in the Inman Square area.
Oh, that's where I live. Go ahead.
I can't stand those peeps.
Yeah.
I couldn't possibly eat them. But
No.
we would take them and try to, use their pelts. So that is to say, we would try to roll them flat with flour and then cut them up and stick them together with a mixture of water and confectioner sugar to turn them into little jackets so that dolls could wear them.
Oh my God!
That's a little on the demented side, no? I mean,
It was on the demented side. Yes, I agree. Yeah.
now, did you have to move to Vermont after that, or you chose to move to Vermont?
Yes, we had to move.
You were deported from Inman Square.
That's right.
Thank you, Allison.
Wow,
Appreciate
were
it.
you there in Inman Square at the time they were doing what Allison says?
I
making
was.
little peep jackets.
Allison and I were in a dark alley doing the. Oh, well, you have more to say. It can't get any better than that, Allison. Go ahead.
A good friend of mine, Allison Woodman. Who lived on West Street.
Oh, you're Allison.
Who was an art. And that's another Allison.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Who went to Rhode Island School of Design.
Yeah.
She was intrigued by this process, so she and I together worked on this at the dinner table.
Fabulous.
It was, and people, as you would expect, thought we were weird, but that's okay.
And how big are peeps in Vermont now that what city do you live in? What town?
Gee, I live near Brattleboro in Putney area.
Yeah.
And I see them in the stores. They're there.
But it's no Inman Square.
I don't know how big they are.
No Inman Square.
No.
Never. Okay, Allison, that was a fabulous
call. I can envision those little peep jackets right now.
Can we get a clock
somebody
here,
else is
Jamie,
texting,
if you don't mind, please?
and they are saying that this is why our civilization is kaput, because of this obsession with peeps. And listen to this from Nancy and Clinton.
What'd she say?
My mother keeps buying peeps every year at Easter, and every year I say, "You really like those things?" And every year she says the same. "No, I really don't." But she eats them anyway. It must be a sentimental thing. I'm not sure why, considering we are Jewish. There you go.
What's the religious hook on this?
Well, because people associate them with Easter, and maybe that's a Christian holiday as opposed to a Jewish holiday.
Well, maybe it's a Passover
which would be
thing,
Passover.
too.
I've been to many Passovers. I have
You
never
have
seen
never had a
anyone
peep?
disgrace the Passover table with a peep, but apparently Nancy and Clinton, that's what her mom does.
I want you
every
to
year.
know at the good Passover meals, you have matzo balls in the shape of a peep. Have you ever had that today? It's incredible to see. It's really fabulous.
Okay.
We have to continue this for 3 more minutes, unfortunately.
Well, this person, Kate from Quincy, says, "Hi, J&M. I was pro-peep. Wanted to let you know local peep history. A spoof peep show used to be held at the Old Blue Diner. Did you know about that?
No.
Dioramas of any scenes were entered for prizes. Also, Phillips Candy sells partially chocolate-dipped peeps. Yum, yum, yum. However, as a vegetarian, I'm bummed by the previous info. Read the pork ingredients on your show."
Well, I can understand that. Nancy and Clinton, have we talked to you? I don't think so. You're next. Hello there.
Hi, we've spoken before, second-time caller.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. Hi.
I love you guys. I
Thank
wanted
you.
to say that I think it's kind of a sentimental thing.
Yeah.
I don't like peeps. I hate the taste, and I never spend my money on something I don't like. My mom, however, she buys them every year, and every year I ask her, "Mom, you really like those things?" And she says, "No, I actually don't," but she eats them anyway.
Well, wait. Well, what is that? Have you probed that at all to think what is that about? I mean, what is she saying?
Sentimental.
That's all it is?
Just like the Jewish woman from Clinton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Nancy, thank you. It was good to talk to you again. Call again
Alan
soon,
from
please.
Medway
What do you
says,
say?
"I really hate the thud of heavy items dropping into the empty trash bucket." So you know what he does?
No.
He lines the bottom of trash cans with peeps.
That's great.
And Jim says, "Bob in Rhode Island, I think we should throw Hebrew national salami in the garbage too."
Well, that's actually
so there
a whole
you go,
different
Jim.
story.
He took care of you.
Do you know
there.
what's that called? A shelf life, the half life of a nuclear something or other.
Nuclear waste.
We haven't discussed that.
That's
These
right. They
never
last forever.
ever. I mean, they do get stale, but they never
will survive Armageddon. They
There's
just they
what's
can't
his
be
face,
destructive.
the curiosity guy. What's his name again? Edgar B.
Edgar B.
Hurd
Hurd
III. Do peeps ever? They never disintegrate.
That's
Is that
right.
correct? Edgar said we've not been on the planet long enough to find out.
Yeah, well, I think they're the
Probably,
cockroaches of the candy aisle. That's what I think they are. Absolutely.
We have to.
We're done.
Unfortunately, we got to take one more call.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, okay.
Robin, make it good, will you please? For you're in Arlington.
I love peeps. I would love them
Jesus.
in my casket as a line.
As what?
I would love them line my casket.
She would love to line her casket with peeps. And what do you do with them while you're still breathing, Robin?
Okay, so you gotta buy the packet 10.
Yeah.
You open them up.
Yeah.
And the first thing you do is you eat the eyes.
Yeah.
You have to make them offline, every one of them. And then you eat them one at a time. You finish the package before you come home.
Yeah. That's it's a lovely call. And Thank you, and I hope you get your wish when you go to the great beyond. Thank you, Robin.
Did you know this?
Very much for the call.
A texter says the company that makes Peeps is actually founded by Sam Bourne, a Jewish immigrant from Russia. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
I did not. That is the claim.
Well.
But Peeps are gross, candy corn is gross, candy canes are gross, no matter how much holiday marketing they do,
fine.
says the final text of the hour. I think
Well,
that about
blessedly, as
sums
they say,
it.
the show is over.
Lots of people think that, Jim.
By the way, if
Okay.
anybody thinks we're not doing this next year, you're out of your mind.
Okay.
So
all right.
don't. This
Look,
is
something to look forward to.
It is.
The big controversy. If somebody says if there were
255 in 5 minutes. Can you imagine that?
If there were no Peeps, Jim, as a texter says, we
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to have this wonderful controversy over them.
I agree.
suppose that's one way to look at it. Anyway,
It is
tune in
one.
on Monday. The NAACP's Michael Curry will be with us. The Ground Truth Project's Charlie Sennett, NYU medical ethicist Art Kaplan, the Reverend Zaire Monroe and Emmett G. Price III, and Authority on Online Disinformation, Boston University's Joan. Oh my God.
That's
Joan
an
Donovan.
AIB with surrounded by. If you go on YouTube.com/GBH
Very nice.
News, you can see.
Very nice.
What?
Joan Donovan on Monday. She's really great. On
Sally from Rosendale says maybe Harvard can rebind that book with peepskins. What do you think? Thank you, Sally. That was a good point. Thank you.
Excellent. How creative is
Okay,
that?
that's it.
Okay, I
You
want
gotta
to
go.
thank our crew, Zoe Matthews,
Pathetic.
Aiden Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah
Embarrassing.
Loss. Additional support from Ethan Kotler. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jenny Bologna. Special thanks to our BPL crew, Maddie Geyer, Brad Lewis, Carly Cochran, Isabella, Karen, Sandra Lopez Burke. Thanks to our host at Newsfeed Cafe and the folks across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Right after us is going to be the Culture Show, which starts right here at 2 o'clock with Jared Bowen and the gang. You don't want to miss it. I'm Marjorie Egan.
You're supposed to say thank you for
Oh,
coming.
thank you to the people in the audience. That's right, who came
Oh,
down to the
my
Boston Weather
God.
Club. Sorry, should have said that. I was distracted by the Peeps
Peeps.
discussion. No question about
I understand
it.
that.
Okay, I am Marjorie Egan. I'm here
Jim
with
Browdy.
my Peeps. There he is with his Peeps.
I am
Thank you very
indeed.
much for
Goodbye.
tuning in.
Programs comes from you. And ABCD, a nonprofit organization providing low-income residents with health services, including reproductive health care, committed to helping people get from where they are to where they want to be. BostonABCD.org/empower. Stay informed this election season and join local political newsmakers, analysts, and activists as they discuss issues and take a deep dive into local politics. Catch Talking Politics tonight at 7 on GBH2.
Your financial support is what keeps GBH on the air. Thank you to everyone who gave during our recent membership drive. We did meet our overall goal, and it was an incredible effort. Because of your support, we can keep doing what we do best, bring you the news and
Parton's. So this is just an incredible achievement for her. And I remind people all the time, she's from Texas, she's a Southern girl. Those boots and that hat come naturally to her.
Yeah. I mean, I started listening to this morning when I got up, and I was listening a little bit on my way down here in the car. And it struck me in a way it hasn't for me listening to a new album in a while. I was like, this is not a snack. This is not something, I mean, it's fun. It's big and it's fun at times, but I was like, this is a meal. This is an album that at some point I need to actually just sit down alone in a room and listen to from start to finish, because there is clearly, it opens with what I would call a statement of purpose song.
Let me interrupt you, Edgar, because let's play that as we talk about this is much more than a snack. This is, and then we'll just talk about that a lot more. This is from the opening track, as Edgar was just saying, of Cowboy Carter with her song American Requiem. So back to your point, Edgar, this is an opening salvo.
Yes. And then there's a thesis statement which comes kind of somewhere in the middle of that song Spaghetti, where she's basically saying, like, I am challenging the idea that genre exists, essentially.
That's right.
And I think it's one of the things I think is really cool about this is, I was thinking about this, one of the songs that she covers is Blackbird by the Beatles. And there's poignancy in that because if folks know the history of Blackbird, Paul McCartney has talked about the fact that it was what was happening in the civil rights movement that inspired him to write that song. But I think there's also an interesting parallel here in that song Blackbird comes from the Beatles' White Album, which in its time period was similarly challenging the notion of genre, saying music is coming from everywhere, it can be synthesized, we have roots that go that go down, we have branches that go in this other direction, and like, let me challenge the idea that like one can't move across these things, and that's what's happening in this album. It's fantastic.
There's so much.
Let me just also mention this is Act 2 of Renaissance.
Yes.
Remember, the first act was about Renaissance. This is the second. Go.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that she's doing things externally too. I mean, on the one hand, you have her greeting basically the king and queen of country music as they exist today, because she has Dolly Parton and Willie Nelson both appearing on this album, both people who had to come up in their own right, who weren't always respected, the same narrative that she, not to the degree probably with what she's experienced, but they both participate in this album, both saying, welcome here to country music. The first part of the album, you could argue, is more traditional country music as we might know it. Then it explodes out of that. It evolves. She has Linda Martell, who also weighs in, saying, yes, this is genre breaking, and she does that. And so this changes the form. Now we'll see when she gets invited to the Grand Ole Opry and see if that happens and whether she would even want to participate, because I think you can argue that in a lot of ways she just changed the course of country music today while not totally adhering to its forms.
Well, Linda Martell, just so folks know, is the first black woman to appear to be invited to the Grand Ole Opry. She had some issues. She's still alive, and she's on the cover, which lists a lot of artists. So that's gain. That's her referencing back to the black roots of country, and not to mention all of the musicians who are playing the instruments that some black folk brought from Africa with them, including the banjo. So people don't know that. So this is a monumental moment. What I want to see, you want to see if she gets invited to the Opry. What happens at the Grammys, people?
Yeah. And also,
you mean where does she go?
Yeah, you go.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly
I don't want to
right.
be on that nominating committee.
Yeah, that's
and
exactly right.
also, I mean, I'm thinking about when Beyonce puts an album out, that's not just a music event. That is a cultural event.
That's
I
right.
love. There is a lot happening in the cover art of this photo of her in the rodeo queen gear on a horse. I like. She's already been signaling with her fashion that this is coming. And so I'm excited to watch the ripples of that in these other areas like fashion and, outside of the realm of music, because it's coming.
Yep. Well, moving to a darker side of the music industry right now, it's a story that's become all too familiar. We saw it play out again this week, and this would be federal investigators from Homeland Security raiding the LA and Miami homes of Sean Combs. For decades now, he's been a top producer in music, and this seems to be, well, we have no confirmation, but it seems to be stemming from sexual assault allegations, sex trafficking allegations. As always in these investigations, we know that the authorities spent a lot of time in his homes. We know they took a lot of stuff out of his homes. We know the record of accusations that were leveled against him last fall, but this is another example, it seems, of somebody in extraordinary power and a possible extraordinary abuse, horrible abuse of that power.
I mean, some of the charges are incredibly disturbing, and that's using a light word. There are 4 Jane Does, 1 John Doe. Some have accused him of drugging them. Some were asked to perform sex with other sex workers so he could watch. One of the charges that came up in the Cassie Ventura charge, which he settled with her back in November. By the way, there's a couple of people that filed suit under New York's law, which allowed them a limited time for past abuse to file a lawsuit. So there's a couple from under that era. They just squeaked by in November and filed charges just coming to light now, and others not. One of the ones that I think, to me, I don't know how you get around this, is this former producer, videographer, audio capture person, Little Rod, who says he has plenty of tape, plenty of visual evidence of all of this. But I wanted to go back to this incident that happened or was brought up in the Cassie charges about an executive at the time. There was a board meeting, and one of the women came in and he got up and started beating her. This is all alleged in that charge. Remember, this was settled. And then
in a day. It was settled in a single day.
But just saying, this incident happened. People got around the board table apparently got up to help her, and he threatened everybody, if you get up, you're fired. So, I mean, it's really, tawdry is not the word, disturbing is not the word, it's pretty awful. And some people say, finally, this is the comeuppance of a lot of people in the music business.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you listen to legal experts talking, I mean, the fact that, the federal government is involved, the fact that these raids happened at that level, that Homeland Security is involved, there is, in all likelihood, there is evidence they know that is there somewhere that they went looking for. So this is incredibly serious. Obviously, it's very serious, and it's bad across the board.
Two raids, to be clear, in Miami and Los Angeles at the same time, because the thought was they didn't want anybody to tell anybody.
Well, also at the same time, they arrested somebody who was described as his drug mule in Florida. You know that they always are doing that, so if you're arrested, you'll sing essentially to get out of the charges because you probably have information this is somebody closely associated with him. Well, coming up, the Coolidge Corner Theater gets its close-up, plus cracking down on the business boon from the Davids bits. That's next on The Culture Show, broadcasting live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's art and culture programming.
Always asking questions.
How can you share a tip with GBH's investigative unit?
Investigative reporter Chris Burrell.
The best way is to send an email to investigations@wgbh.org.
Investigations@wgbh.org.
Investigations@wgbh.org. And our team will read those emails and talk about them and make a decision whether they're worth pursuing a story.
The GBH News Center for Investigative Reporting.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Celebrity Series of Boston, presenting David Sedaris live at Symphony Hall on April 12th. You can hear the humor writer's observations marked by his expansive curiosity and biting wit. Tickets at celebrityseries.org. And Babson College. Students can gain the know-how to become a successful leader at the #1 graduate school in entrepreneurship, ranked by U.S. News and World Report. Virtual open house April 17th. babson.edu/grad open house.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, as advocates celebrate the T's new fare discounts for low-income riders, some are warning about its financial future. Pro-Palestinian advocates are holding an interfaith rally at Faneuil Hall to protest the war in Gaza. And local congregations are getting ready for Easter. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Welcome back to The Culture Show, broadcasting live from the GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm Jared Bowen with co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Horwick III. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review. This week has been a blockbuster moment for the Coolidge Corner Theater. Unlike many movie theaters across the country which have closed, the Brookline one is emerging from the pandemic with a renovation that includes a new concession stand, a renovated lobby, 2 state-of-the-art movie theaters, and an education center. We spoke with Catherine Tallman, CEO and president of the Coolidge Corner Theater, earlier this week, and she talked about the value of the movie theater experience. In other words, getting out of your home, away from your screens, and being together.
I have no issue with streaming. I mean, streaming is like, I can listen to a CD or I can go to Symphony Hall. I can watch a movie streaming or I can go experience it with 400 other people and share their laughter and share their gasps, and it's just a completely different experience. I mean, I think that we don't just show films, we offer experiences. And the fact that it's on a huge screen with fabulous sound is certainly helpful.
For people who don't know, the Coolidge is one of our great, first stylistically, it's just gorgeous Art Deco, and it's one of our great independent movie houses. People have only had a couple of days to experience renovation. One of those people is you, Callie.
Yes, I loved it. For those who've been there, you remember going in from the side, and as one of the writers from the Globe put it, freezing out there trying to wait to get into the lobby.
Yeah.
Well, now you just continue down that path to what you might think of as the back, but it's now the front to a large extent, and it's all glass. It's beautiful. The lobby is so spacious. The popcorn's tasty, and then you go upstairs
and loud.
And real butter
to the new theaters, and the seats are so comfy, and that sound is great. And on top of that, there's a space specifically set aside for education. As you all know, they do so many programs over there that are interesting. Even if you never go, you're just tempted to go all the time because they're just so interesting in the way they pull together those discussions. Many, many more people will be thrilled to go and sit in those seats and sit in this wonderful educational space, which has a deck. It's glass too, so you can walk out on the deck. It was freezing the night I was there. I said, I can't wait for it to be warmer, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, Jared, as you alluded to, we sort of have an embarrassment of riches here in this area in terms of these kinds of theaters, right? Like, I think the Capitol Theater in Arlington's been showing movies since 1925, the Coolidge since 33, the Brattle since 53, Somerville Theater's been around since the 19
West Newton
teens,
Cinema.
West Newton Cinema,
Yeah.
right? And it's interesting because I hear, when she says that they offer experiences as well. I would argue one of the important things that they offer is experience. Mm-hmm. That is to say, in a world that we're in now, where there is where there is so much content, which is great, and I love that. But one of the things is there's so much content, and the thing that these theaters, and the Coolidge is as good as any about this, is that they have people on staff who are cinephiles and geeks and weirdos, and they love this stuff so much, and they're curating all of this content that's out there for us. They're sharing their passion with us by saying, we're going to put on a Halloween movie marathon. I mean, the Coolidge has Coolidge After Midnight. They have their 70 millimeter stuff, big screen classics, science on the screen. They do all of this cool stuff, and it's people who really love movies who's sorting through all that stuff and saying, I'm really passionate about this. We're going to present this. It's a unique experience, and I love it.
And I'll just add 2 quick things. They're able to do this in a time where we see movie theaters closing. They're able to expand because there is such an appreciation for film. And also, people should know this when they go in after Callie's visual tour that she just gave, to know that the architects used the cook, the thief, his wife, her lover. I always
I think you got that right. Yeah.
And The Wizard of Oz and 2001 as the Space Odyssey as prompts architecturally for the design, the sumptuous design of those movie theater houses in all blue or all red, basically moving into Technicolor. Well, now let's head to Italy, where I think Edgar and I have already decided this is our favorite story of the week. There is a renewed David versus Goliath fight underway. A Florence museum director may be taking on capitalism at the expense of freedom of expression. So not too long ago on the show, we talked about basically all of the copyrights that expire this year, where suddenly you have access to do whatever you want to do publicly with things like The Great Gatsby and others that have recently fallen out of copyright. Well, this museum director at the Academy Gallery in Florence, where Michelangelo's statue of David, the very nude David, stands very large, has decided to crack down using Italian law on people who want to use the David for commercial gain. Now, this is people who like to focus, as we said, leading into the tease here, focus on his bits and other things that she might find a little tawdry. Well, in Italy, apparently, whereas in other nations, including within the EU as a whole, you have 70 years to go beyond that copyright. We have about 460 years since Michelangelo's death, so it's well into public domain, but they're cracking down on this. Edgar, I know you have thoughts.
Yeah, well, I mean, the question here for me is where are the dividing lines in this, where this is about economics and where is this about taste? And it seems like this is largely about taste. So, there have been a number of lawsuits that have been put out about this. There's of those that have sort of been out there right now, there is only one that makes sense to me. There's one where she brought a lawsuit against somebody who was basically outside of the museum, who were printing up tickets with David on it and sort of selling an experience that the museum, like at a price that was more than it would have cost them to go to the museum. Crack down on that. I see that, because that's confusing to the consumer. If you're a tourist and you're coming in, it seems. But beyond that, it seems like taste. Here's a quote from the head of the museum. I am sorry that there is so much ignorance and so little respect in the use of a work that for centuries has been praised for its beauty, for its purity, for its meaning, its symbols. They're making bad products in bad taste out of plastic. So what?
So she could be talking about placemats and postcards and magnets, maybe some other tawdry things. Things that we find in museum gift shops all over the world.
Absolutely. It's tasteless. It's what it is. It's tasteless, marketing and economy. That's what it is.
Yeah, but
it's together. Yeah, I didn't say, I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just telling you what it is,
Yeah.
And in this instance, we know that bits is really not the word you want to use when referring to various parts of David. So that's what they're capitalizing on, if you will. And, I can see that it's kind of gross. And I can also see Italy saying, look, this is an artifact of importance by a very important sculptor, and you're lowering it to its, I don't even know where to lower it to, so you're missing the whole point. Here's my question. I wonder if it sometimes leads other folks, you know how you do when you're watching something on TV and you go, is that right? You start looking it up. You actually go deeper to the history, to what really is, what makes this statue so important. Some of those people know it'll just be, a magnet that they'll have on the refrigerator, as you said, Jared. But for other people, it actually might lead them to look at the statue a little bit differently.
Well, this is where I come down. I mean, I am very firmly against this museum director in this circumstance.
Yeah.
This is freedom of expression for something that ultimately, yes, it's in Italy, but this is the world's at this point. We were talking about this with the pyramids a few weeks ago, too, when there was that outrageous idea that the pyramids would be rebuilt. Yes, they reside in Egypt, but this is the world's heritage at this point. And there has to be a means of artistic expression so that you can do what you want with a centuries-old statue. Some people, she may decide that it's tawdry and it's gross commercially. I think that she's also trying to get her bite at the apple here trying to bring the money back into Italy, which the government passed. But I just don't see how you cut down on this expression. As I said, the EU has also really not bought into this, except for Greece has some similar limitations with representation of the Acropolis. But this is troubling to me.
What, is it tasteless?
I'm not going to weigh in on that because I think it's a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, you really, I mean, just ask, this case, is it tasteless?
No, I mean case-by-case.
Yes.
One magnet may be very tasteless, but another might inspire somebody to want to go up and go visit it in person one
But
day.
it's also like tasteless to who?
I'm asking the question. I'm just asking the question.
Taste is so completely
It is.
subjective. It's very difficult.
Some people's taste is all in their mouth, as we know. So I'm just asking the question.
Well, I think this is the most rancorous debate that we've had so far on the Culture Show. To be continued. Well, let's move on to the continent now, or up to the islands anyway, to the British Museum, which is consistently bashed and is really going to be bashed again because this is a museum that has just been beset with scandal. One with the Parthenon that we were just talking about. Do they send the marbles back or do they not send them? These are the marble friezes on the Parthenon. They have Benin bronzes. Should they go back? Should they be repatriated? Should they not? And all while this is happening, more than 1,000 or about 1,800 objects are disappearing from their archives, objects that haven't even been registered, and they now know that it was their chief curator who was taking these objects and then selling them on eBay.
This, to me, is just incredible.
Bonkers.
This place is just amazing. It seems like every other week there's something going on with them. They may need to just shut down and have like a retreat or something and rethink the whole way they do this. Here's the piece of this that just got me. That apparently, this is alleged, he was taking certain items, like certain really pricey items, and mislabeling them so that they would have a different value. And I'm sorry to make this comparison, but of course it brought me right back to thievery at the self-checkout. You know, where people take the steak and mark it down to the cream cheese. Come on. That's what he was doing.
Essentially what he was doing. No, you're right.
Right?
No, that's exactly right. Now, this is Peter John Higgs is his name now. This is not to be confused with Peter Ware Higgs, who is the guy behind the Higgs boson. But he apparently has the same name. No, I cannot... What I keep coming back to is, what was he thinking? Like, the idea that he was doing this, apparently over a course of years, over and over again, selling the stuff openly on eBay. Like, this is absolutely bonkers that he would do this. It absolutely boggles my mind that this curator was engaging in this for this period of time. And of course, he denies that this has happened, and also his lawyer said he couldn't show up in court this week because he's not feeling very well. Of course you're not feeling very well. You've been caught.
So now the court is asking for the items to be returned. They're asking for PayPal to turn over its data because these are materials that were sold in the U.S. and in Denmark. And now there's a new director at the British Museum who is just walking into a fire, basically, because it's his job to clean up all these messes. Also, to be interesting to watch is he was the director of the National Portrait Gallery in London, where he drew what he called a red ethical line with BP, the oil company, who has now given $50 million to the British Museum, which needs a lot of money to clean up their problems, but also to clean up the museum itself. It's in the middle of a $1 billion restoration effort. So there's a lot of issues that this new director is
Just
facing.
a note also that they've only recovered 350 of the 1,800 artifacts, so it's not a small thing.
That's 1,800.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, check your eBay receipts.
Yeah.
So moving back here to New York now, we're staying with it on museums, and a big apology from the Museum of Art and Modern Art in New York City this week, which had banned a pair of patrons who wanted to enter with keffiyehs in their bag. They weren't even wearing them, not that should be an issue either. But apparently at security a couple of weeks ago, when these patrons were trying to enter, the museum saw through their surveillance, they asked for a bag check, the keffiyeh, and decided that they would not be allowed in. They, of course, protested. The MoMA turned around and apologized this week. But this is happening at a number of museums now where either they're under protest, being protested by organizations which are calling out museums for not asking for a ceasefire for what's happening in Gaza right now. So are they trying to stifle protests? Are they trying to stifle individual thought? And here, MoMA was called on it.
It's not clear to me that this was a protest from these two. I think they just...
It doesn't seem like it was.
It was simply in their bag.
They just had it in their bag.
I think what happened is MoMA obviously there was a protest that happened a couple weeks back now at MoMA, and they were. If you look at the series of events here, it seems like this security guard, whether they were prepped on this or not, were worried about another protest like this breaking out, saw this and thought, uh-oh, this might be a problem. Like that kind of is what it sounds like happened. But I don't think these patrons, they said that they also said, can we just bring it in and I'll just check my bag.
Yeah.
And they were like, nope.
No. Yeah. So they just put it on underneath their shirt and went in and no problem.
Yeah.
Because nobody could see it. But I mean, this is that doesn't get to the issue. And there are certain banners and certain symbols. So it's going to get dicier as we continue.
The museum has clarified. I mean, they've come out in their apology, which I think we should say is good. It's good that they have at least come out with an apology. I don't think it's right that this happened the way it did, for sure, especially because these patrons were not given clarity about why they couldn't do this. But they've come out and they've said, look, we don't ban these things. The policy does ban banners, signs, and flags. They sort of said, we misinterpreted a scarf for a flag or a banner, and so that was our mistake. And keffiyehs are not banned here. You can have them in. So clarification, good. But Jared, I think the larger question is, should museums be a place where protesting can happen? I don't know.
Well, this is a country that has to allow free speech, and I think the other great question is that all institutions, certainly educational ones too, are facing is what is our obligation to step forward with a statement? And at this point, is it helpful to step forward with a statement asking for a ceasefire, or are our statements made within our content? Because ironically, this pair was also going in to see an exhibition that it was interrogating militarism in the world. So does the content speak for itself, or should they be more vocal? And museums, education institutions, a lot of places are having to reconcile that right now, or you'll continue to have these sorts of issues where people feel excluded, and then it just rains down negative press on the institutions. Well, before we leave this, we have one quick update, which is last week, I think it was, we were talking about Mass MoCA, and there was a strike happening there. Well, that 3-week strike ended this week with ratification of an agreement with the union on Tuesday, where employees now have a 2-year agreement. They'll see pay raises rise to up to 12%. They'll move from $6.25 an hour to $18 an hour, and full-time staff gets a 3.5% increase. More paid holidays and overtime after 10 hours, because Mass MoCA out in Western Massachusetts, they have a lot of festivals there, so people work really hard and they work extra hours. So it's a good resolution to that museum as well. Well, coming up, far from a slam dunk, Caitlin Clark has not responded to Ice Cube's $5 million offer to join his Big Three. That and more is next on The Culture Show, broadcasting live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library.
As the influx of migrants into Massachusetts continues, the Healy administration is rolling out new eligibility requirements for shelter. I'm Adam Riley. This week on Talking Politics, we'll look at the shifting landscape of the migrant crisis and at why Massachusetts has become a target for Republican governors looking to score points on the topic. Plus, a sit-down with the state's Secretary of Veterans Services, John Santiago. Join me for Talking Politics tonight at 7 on GBH2.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Tanglewood, the summer home of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, bringing Beethoven, Broadway, and more to the Berkshires. You can plan your summer at tanglewood.org. And Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure and exists to help people embrace today and pursue tomorrow. Learn more at libertymutual.com.
There are record-setting numbers of international students enrolling in U.S. colleges and universities, and that is changing their financial models.
There's this perception that international students are coming here, that we're paying as Americans, we're subsidizing them, but the fact is it's really the reverse.
A special report about international students on American campuses. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to The Culture Show, broadcasting live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. If you're just tuning in, co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Horwick III are here for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Dr. Phil is truly a spin doctor, launching Merritt Street Media, a multi-platform network which includes a nightly talk show, Dr. Phil Prime Time. So this is all about to launch on April 2nd, where Dr. Phil just ended his big, long-time talk show, therapy show, whatever you want to describe it, even though he hasn't had a psychology license in quite a long time. But he ended his show so that he could launch this network, which has the backing of Trinity Broadcasting, which is a Christian...
referring to the Trinity.
Yes, exactly. A Christian company for broadcasting. And he's based it in Texas, his home state, and he wants to appeal to middle Americans. So how do we see this shaping up? Because he feels that there is still space to be carved out in the broadcast media market, and especially in the political one.
It's going to work very well for him. First of all, his old shows are in syndication everywhere. As he says himself, he can see himself everywhere, and they're still extremely popular. We should note that Trinity Satellite distributes to DirecTV, Dish, Charter, Altice. I'm not familiar with that. He's also bringing back some faces and voices that folks are familiar with. Nancy Grace. People may remember she had a true crime show for a long time. I don't know where she's been in the last few years, but he's bringing her back in that format. Steve Harvey and he are going to co-host a show. Steve Harvey does a lot of mentoring work with young men, and apparently this show is supposed to address that. But I think for me, the biggest comeback is for the guy who was kicked off The Bachelor for untoward kind of stuff, is back now with his wife, doing a kind of dating show that Dr. Phil promises you will not be able to turn away from.
We'll see. We'll test that.
Also, now let's not forget that apparently on the 5-acre campus that is the home in just outside of Dallas-Fort Worth for this, there is also a small museum that is dedicated to Dr. Phil himself. So he's built himself a little museum where you can look at all of his history and television. I mean, this guy's kind of like remarkable just as, I don't know if mogul's the word, just like a media businessman, right? Like he is a brand, and he is somebody who has just like built this brand. He's obviously he's also like junior varsity version of Oprah, right? Like she brought him into the fold. She built him, and it's interesting. He was like a consultant. He had this business where they consulted with court people. And Oprah was involved in a court case, and that's how she met him. She identified him. She said, "You've got the thing," brought him into her fold. And just as Oprah has done launching her own network, he now, Juniorversity Oprah, is going to try to do the same thing. I'm with you. I think it's going to work. He sort of has the magic touch. I think he does the thing that successful brands do really well, which is he knows who his audience is. And he doesn't try to stray from what he does for his audience. He's got it. He stays on brand. He does it. I think it's going to work.
Also, I would add to that, he knows his audience and he knows his timing. Because he has identified this as a moment where cancel culture has taken over. He kind of wants to reset the clock here, say that he is appealing to middle America. I think a lot of people want to identify themselves as that. They see this rancor between the right and the left. They assert that they are squarely in the middle. They're tired. They're exhausted. He says he believes in truth and values. He's also saying he doesn't, at least he told E.T. the other night, he doesn't want to be, or other reporters, that he doesn't want to be a politician. So this becomes his platform for truth and values, ending cancel culture, and reorienting American society.
And I don't believe any of that. But what I do believe is that he has great marketing skill and the ability, as Edgar has said, to position some shows. I also think because it's so huge that he will Bigfoot out a lot of these smaller kind of attempts to do what he says he's going to do. I think he is in no way, you heard it here first, because I want to circle back in 6 months and see how much he's in the middle of something. I don't believe it.
Another thing I think is really interesting about this is the lead up to, so his show is the centerpiece, Dr. Phil Primetime, but the hour 7 to 8 before that 8 o'clock is going to be a news program. So it's interesting that there's a play here into the world of news, which we know is very complicated, and it'll be interesting to see if that finds an audience in particular. And also in a time when all of these big platforms are banking on streaming, that this is a play on cable. This is going to be distributed through traditional cable systems. It's not going to be a subscription thing. That's also, I think, knowing his audience, it's clearly going mostly for an older audience, but I don't know, like it's an interesting business play.
Well, especially with launching a news program, they also have a big Fox executive, former Fox
So
executive in the mix
that
here.
one, I think, keep your eye on.
So I agree, because we see that Oprah didn't necessarily succeed with her network, but this is a different time. And again, I think you're both right. This absolutely goes to marketing. Everything I was espousing was saying his words. I'm not saying that I feel one way or the other, but it's going to be fascinating. I want to see the traction that he gets with this, but we haven't even really seen the tone of the programming yet to get a sense.
I think OWN is very successful, actually. The Oprah Winfrey Network.
Well, I don't think it was as big as many people expected it to be. Remember, there was that struggle to get it on other cable channels.
But she makes big bank.
She definitely has. She has not lost money.
So coming up now, we have seen this major blowback. This was one of the things we talked about early on too, was Dynasty, the Apple documentary about the Patriots, charting this whole the dynasty that they had over 2 decades. When we first watched it at the beginning, as somebody who was just looking at it for entertainment value, I likened it to Succession because it had all of that drama. You had the people you wanted to love, you had the people you wanted to hate. Well, now that was after only 2 episodes. The full thing has played out, and a lot of people are raining down, and a lot of people are now focusing their hate on Bob Kraft, because it seems that this spun out with a clear bias in favor of Bob Kraft and the ownership, making a total villain out of Bill Belichick and giving the players short shrift along the way.
Though Kraft says he's not happy either. With the portrayal.
Even though he gets his copyright at the end of the
series. The last frame copyright.
I'm just saying what he said.
Well, his spin necessarily, so he has said something which a few people have said, which is, he has said something like, it's basically like, I wish they didn't spend as much time on the bad parts and the drama.
Well, actually, you know what? Let's say, because we do have Bob Kraft talking about this when he was asked recently about his thought of Apple and Kraft producer docuseries, The Dynasty.
I felt bad. There was so much emphasis on the more controversial and, let's say, challenging situations over the last 20 years. I wish they had focused more on our Super Bowl wins, our 21-game win streak. Little disappointed that there wasn't more of a real positive approach.
Okay, so this is the part. I mean, what did you think they were making? You think they were going to make a 9-episode series that was going to be about how amazing your team was for all of these years? I mean, that's bonkers. You watch television, you know how this works. They were clearly building characters, and they need a villain in a 9-episode arc. And in this case, Belichick was the villain. One thing I will say that I think does hold water, and again, I sort of feel like a lot of the players have come out and they've said, like, we sat for a ton of stuff, and they only used a couple of little things here and there, and it was, that first. Also, I kind of think, what did you think was going to happen? But also, some of them sort of felt like things were taken out of context, and that's where you start to wade into problematic stuff. And they felt like Bill Belichick, frankly, that they had said a lot of good stuff about him, that he had been done dirty in this, and they have come out, at least 4 or 5 players have come out and said, no, Bill's great. We love Bill too. We said a lot of great stuff about Bill. In terms of Bill Belichick, if you watch this, he did not do himself any favors. I mean, we all in this area know what he's like when he gets up behind a podium, and he's very grumbly, and he just, we're moving on. And he was like that in the interviews, so he doesn't do himself any favors trying to come off as better than that. But
speaking of T-shirts, there was one I saw at a fair here, one of those, vendor things, and it was many pictures of Bill Belichick, and below each picture it said happy, sad, frustrated, whatever. And it took me a long time to realize it was the same picture.
Just him looking grumpy.
Well, there's all this conversation. Somebody's laughing all the way to the bank, and I think that's the Crafts. I think it's Apple. I think it's the Jeff Benedict who wrote this book, who got a lot of criticism even for the book about being too too slanted toward the Kraft family and bias against Bill Belichick. So it kind of played out as you would expect. And as these, especially when you take hundreds and hundreds of hours of interview and footage,
Right.
you know, as you said, you have to craft a narrative, and nobody's ever happy.
Yeah.
And everybody claims they were taken out of
It's a
context.
juicy story, however they crafted it.
I crafted.
Yes.
Well played, Callie Crossley. Well, the other really interesting story, we don't have an update today because she has not. She's decided to just focus on the playoffs right now. But Caitlin Clark was offered $5 million by Ice Cube, proprietor of the Big Three League, to join that league and become a big-time independent basketball star. She, of course, is basically the Taylor Swift of the NCAA women's division. She's focused on playing right now, so people don't know if she'll go forward with the NBA or the WNBA or choose the Big Three, but a lot of people have a lot to say about this.
They do. Now, Ice Cube says he's doing this because one of the motivations, obviously he wants to make money too, but that she's a generational, as in once in a generation player, and he wants to have her on this team. And to stop players like her to have to go overseas to make money. This is not going to be a problem for her because, as we were discussing earlier this week, she already has, somebody said, more than $3 million in endorsements at this moment before she goes to the WNBA. I just want to point out that more than $3 million means that she is making more than the 3.2 contract over several years of Don Staley, the winningest coach for the South Carolina Gamecocks.
Zone. Born and raised in
South
Philly.
Carolina. Yeah,
she
that's
was
right.
born and raised in Philly, though.
But I'm just saying, so she gets money at this point probably is not her driving factor. It'll be interesting. I mean, this would be a real bold move if she went in this direction, and obviously a big boost for his institution.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's kind of interesting. There are a few things here. One, in theory, she should not have to choose between playing in the WNBA and doing the Big Three League. The Big Three League would only be 8 to 10 appearances. It's competitive, but it's more of an exhibition thing. It's 3 players, 3-on-3. One thing I find fascinating, Ice Cube's very smart. Like, basketball, probably more than any other sport, is driven by that individual greatness thing, that transcendent figure, the Michael Jordans, the LeBron James, right? This is what has propelled basketball for years. And so I think to have a figure like this, and we've had some before, Brittany Griner, et cetera, but Caitlin sort of is positioned to be this generational thing in basketball, and Ice Cube saying, like, I'm going to get a piece of this, I think is really interesting. But there's also... The NBA has not been happy with the Big Three, and there was some legal stuff that was brought up in the past because the Big Three was saying, hey, the NBA is trying to stop us from do stuff. The NBA owns the WNBA. What we don't know in this equation, because there would potentially be 1 or 2 days where there would be conflict if she played in both leagues, whether the WNBA will allow it to happen, and that's going to be something to watch in this story too.
Well, I'm going to guess no.
Well, it also highlights the pay inequity, of course, between the
yes.
women and men. And you mentioned Brittany Griner. This is why people of her ilk were playing in places like Russia.
Totally.
And look at the circumstances where she landed, but this was to get a bigger paycheck.
Right.
And yeah, when you have somebody come along and offer $5 million when most of the players are making just a tiny fraction of that, it highlights that as well. Well, that is our...
There's a storm coming.
That's the signal for our lightning round. These are the stories that caught our attention this week, or at least the headlines that caught our attention this week. Callie, what was yours?
First Lady Jill Biden is writing a children's book about Willow, the White House cat. That's the name of the book. We've heard so much about Commander and those dogs. They're all apparently in trouble all the time. Well, this apparently
that happens when you bite a lot of people.
I guess it's true. This is a sweet little cat, short-haired tabby.
Are there sweet little cats?
Well, that's how it's being portrayed. That's all I know.
Edgar just alienated half our audience.
I just asked the question. I didn't say where I come down on it. I might have said it a little
It's coming out in
pointedly.
June, Edgar. I'm buying you a copy.
Thank you.
Anyway, so as we know, Jill Biden is a very strong believer in education, and she is an educator herself, Dr. Jill Biden. So I think this is sweet.
That is sweet. Edgar, what's the headline that got your attention?
The headline is, a Liverpool museum needs your help to identify this enigmatic portrait. This is an interesting situation. It's the International Slavery Museum in Liverpool, England, and they've long had this portrait. I think since 2007 they acquired it, this portrait. It's called The Black Boy, and it's a young black boy. It's a stirring, very beautiful portrait. We know who painted it. In 1844, it was painted by a guy, William Lindsay Windus. But there's no information about who the boy is in the photo. Now, there's a catalog from back in 1891 that tells this story, which everybody thinks is apocryphal, that, the boy was escaping slavery and the artist met him and sent him to do some errands and then painted his picture. And then somebody saw the picture and was like, that's my relative. And he was reunited with his parents and they went off to travel the world. Most people think this is not true, but now the museum is crowdsourcing, saying, hey, if you have any information, we're going to try to figure out if there's any way for us to identify who this boy is. I think it's really cool. And they're asking for information on if you know anything about him, but also the time period, the artist, and what they want to do is use this as a centerpiece for basically rehanging this at some point with better information looking at the history of black culture in Liverpool, the time period, etc. So I think it's a really cool story, and if anybody knows anything about it, check out their website. This is the International Slavery Museum in Liverpool.
I think that will happen, by the way. Every time I've seen museums, or most times that I've seen museum do this, the big exception maybe being the Gardner and not getting the paintings back, but other museums, they often get information that helps piece stories together, or they get artworks back, like the Jacob Lawrence series at the Peabody Essex Museum. They did a whole series. They were missing a couple panels, and 2 of them turned up as the show toured the country.
It's that every once in a while you go, the internet is good for something sometimes.
Exactly.
It's very heartening.
Well, one of the things the internet, or at least social media, is good at is introducing us to the Chopster. This would be by way of Martha Stewart, who was out to dinner the other night at a very fancy restaurant at Café Boulud in New York City at Maison Barnes, which is basically was described as a celebrity cavern. It's the private room where you can go have a really nice meal, and for $250 you can buy what's been called the Chopster, which is basically a chicken stuffed with a lobster. And so she put this on Instagram, and the public lost their mind because why is Martha Stewart eating a chicken stuffed with a lobster? But it turns out that this is based on a French dish going back hundreds of years, and it's the French basically version of surf and turf.
Or turducken.
Yeah,
turducken.
Turducken.
Yeah. Although turducken, this is
that also French?
Well, no. Turducken. No,
it's pronounced turducken.
This is all dismantled, so you eat it separately. But it's a fascinating thing, and if you haven't seen this, first of all, it's
gross looking.
It's totally gross. However, I'm thinking kind of the sauce around it might make it kind of tasty. We'll have to check in with Martha Stewart about how it actually tasted.
When we have her on the show, we'll get her to make us one.
Because I'm not sure we heard about that. Well, that is all for this edition of The Culture Show. You can catch up on all things arts and culture by way of our podcast, which you can find on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Callie, before we go, what's coming up on Under the Radar this weekend?
Our 2 segments. The first is focusing on community fridges, of which there are only 10 now in the greater Boston area. There were 30 at the height of COVID when the hunger was off the charts. It's still very high in Massachusetts. And these are communities coming together to fill these fridges for people in need. The second part is connected in a way to the March Madness. Is NBA fashion. A lot of those folks will be moving over to the professional, and it's a lot of fashion for these high-profile athletes.
Love it.
And Edgar on the Curiosity Desk?
We're always looking for questions for our next story, so if you've got something you are curious about, send me an email, curiositydesk@wgbh.org.
And tune into The Culture Show on Monday for Padma Lakshmi and Natasha Lance Rogoff's unbelievable but true story of producing Sesame Street in Moscow. Thank you today to the BPL technical and logistics crew, Glenn Heath, Sai Patel, Josh Polonsky, Maddie Geyer, Matthew Glover, Eddie Hickey, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Isabella Karen, Carly Kokorin, and thanks to the Lennox Hotel and to the Newsfeed Cafe. I'm Jared Bowen. Have an arts and culture-filled weekend.
Where's Mary? Where is she? Where is she? She's just about to close up the library!
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
GBH's All Things Considered is coming up this afternoon at 4, with Marketplace at 6. But first, get a global view of the news with The World. Up next on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Innuendo in Natick, presenting Hunter Douglas Duet Architella PowerView shades for your home and office. Hunter Douglas PowerView Automation, measured and installed by their technicians at Innuendo and Innuendo.com.
Thanks for your support.
On a new American Masters, discover the life and legacy of former U.S. Senator and diplomat Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who waged a decades-long fight to end national poverty. Watch Moynihan tonight at 9 on GBH 2.
Join GBH and Nova for our next free virtual Ask the Expert event, all about the upcoming solar eclipse. On Friday, April 5th at noon, we'll be speaking with astrophysicist Grant Tremblay, who'll share the best viewing techniques, how to prepare for the eclipse, the history behind this phenomenon, and so much more. Bring your questions and come ready to learn about solar eclipses. Find out more and RSVP online now at gbh.org/events.
I'm State House reporter Katie Lannon, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online